The origins of the Minotaurs chapter remain one of the most contentious and deliberately obscured subjects within Imperial records. Unlike many Space Marine chapters whose lineage and founding are matters of pride and open knowledge, the Minotaurs' beginnings are buried beneath layers of redaction, conflicting accounts, and classified administratum files sealed by the highest authorities of Terra. For centuries, Imperial scholars believed the Minotaurs were created during the 21st founding, infamously known as the Cursed Founding of the 36th millennium. This founding gained its ominous moniker due to the unprecedented rate of genetic deviation, mutation, and outright failure among its created chapters. Apothecaries and gene wrights of the period experimented with the gene seed of the original Space Marine legions, attempting to eliminate flaws while enhancing strengths, often with catastrophic results. The connection to this founding seemed to explain the Minotaurs' notorious savagery and battle hunger, traits potentially stemming from unstable gene manipulation. However, more recent archival discoveries have cast significant doubt on this established timeline. Fragmentary battle records from the early 36th millennium reference Astartes bearing the bronze bull heraldry, engaging in compliance actions against rebellious planetary governors in the Segmentum Solar, predating the official sanction of the 21st founding by several decades. These discrepancies suggest the Minotaurs may have been created during an earlier founding, possibly even the mysterious dark founding of the 35th millennium, about which almost nothing is known with certainty. The genetic lineage of the chapter presents an equally perplexing puzzle. The Adeptus Munitorum maintains official documentation listing the Minotaurs as descended from ultramarine stock, the gene seed of Robute Guilliman. Yet their combat doctrines, temperament, and even physiological traits bear little resemblance to the disciplined, strategically minded sons of Guilliman. Instead, battlefield observers have noted disturbing similarities to two first founding legions that would prove far more problematic for Imperial authorities to acknowledge. The first theory, whispered among veteran chapter masters familiar with the old legions, points to the Iron Warriors. The Minotaurs display a methodical approach to siege warfare and zone mortalis operations that echoes the precision of Perdurabo's gene sons. Their proficiency with heavy weapons, armor, and fortification-breaking tactics aligns with Iron Warriors' doctrines. Furthermore, certain Forge World Magos have noted similarities in cranial structure and neural mapping between captured Minotaurs' biological samples and preserved Iron Warrior specimens from before the heresy. The second, and perhaps more disturbing possibility, links the Minotaurs to the World Eaters. Their barely contained battle rage, preference for close-quarters slaughter, and the berserker fury they exhibit in the final stages of combat operations mirror the pre-heresy 12th Legion. Several Ordo Astartes Inquisitors have documented instances of Minotaurs warriors continuing to fight despite sustaining wounds that should render even an Astartes combat ineffective, suggesting the presence of enhanced pain suppression systems similar to early iterations of the Butcher's Nails technology. Both theories remain unproven, with the Minotaurs themselves offering no clarification and the High Lords of Terra maintaining deliberate ambiguity on the matter. This silence serves a purpose. A chapter with uncertain lineage is less likely to develop the independent streak that has led other Astartes forces to occasionally question Imperial authority. The earliest confirmed engagements of the Minotaurs occur in the late 36th millennium, though these records are fragmentary at best. What distinguishes these accounts is not merely the record of victories, but the manner in which they were achieved. During the Macharian heresy, when multiple systems previously brought to compliance by Lord Solar Macharius fell into rebellion, the Minotaurs were deployed to the galactic south. There, they did not simply defeat secessionist forces, they annihilated them with a thoroughness that left entire planetary defense forces broken beyond recovery. The cleansing of Augera stands as one particularly stark example. When the system's governor declared independence from the Imperium, citing irreconcilable differences with Terran taxation policy, 3 companies of Minotaurs made planetfall without warning or declaration. Within 27 hours, the governor's palace was reduced to smoking rubble. His personal guard of 3,000 elite soldiers lay dismembered throughout the capital's central plaza, and the Planetary Defense Force's command structure had been systematically eliminated. Survivors reported Minotaurs Astartes continuing to fire into corpses long after confirmation of kill, behavior that even other Space Marine chapters found excessive. During the 37th millennium, the Minotaurs participated in at least 17 major compliance actions, each characterized by overwhelming force and minimal communication with other Imperial assets. The Carthan Rebuke saw them deployed alongside elements of the Imperial Fists, with the latter's battle records noting unnecessary levels of civilian casualties and concerning indifference to collateral damage. The Minotaurs simply withdrew after completing their assigned objectives, offering no explanation or defense of their methods. This pattern of brutal efficiency, without regard for conventional military restraint, established the chapter's reputation early in their recorded history. They became known as a force deployed when Imperial authorities desired not merely victory, but total subjugation, when examples needed to be made. This specialization in overwhelming force would later evolve into their role as chapter killers, but the foundations were laid in these early compliance actions against mortal foes. Perhaps the most telling aspect of the Minotaur's early history is not what was recorded, but what was deliberately omitted. Standard Imperial protocol requires after-action reports and strategic assessments following Astartes deployments. Yet for nearly 60% of confirmed Minotaurs operations during this period, no such documentation exists in accessible archives. These gaps suggest a pattern of classified deployments, with records either destroyed or sealed within the most restricted vaults of the Inquisition. The involvement of the High Lords of Terra in the Minotaurs' creation and early deployment patterns represents the most compelling evidence of their intended purpose. While most chapters maintain nominal allegiance to the High Lords while operating with significant autonomy, historical analysis reveals the Minotaurs responding directly to Terran authority with unusual speed and compliance. When other forces might question orders or request clarification of objectives, the Minotaurs simply executed their directives with mechanical precision. The Senatorum Imperialis, the formal name for the ruling council of the High Lords, has historically maintained a complex relationship with the Adeptus Astartes. While Space Marines represent the Emperor's finest warriors and most loyal servants, their transhuman nature, chapter traditions, and genetic connection to their primarchs sometimes places their loyalties in a gray area that makes the High Lords uneasy. The potential for a chapter to go rogue, as demonstrated during the Badab War and other historical conflicts, represents a persistent concern for Terra's masters. It is within this context that the purpose behind the Minotaur's creation becomes clear. Analysis of deployment records shows a statistically significant correlation between Minotaur's operations and regions where other Space Marine chapters had begun exhibiting signs of independence or ideological drift. In several instances, the Minotaurs were positioned in neighboring systems shortly before another chapter's activities came under inquisitorial scrutiny, suggesting they were pre-positioned as a contingency force. The Orphean War provides a particularly illuminating case study. When the Celestial Lions chapter began questioning inquisitorial actions in the region, suffering devastating, friendly fire incidents shortly thereafter, the Minotaurs were already conducting operations in an adjacent sector. While no direct confrontation occurred, the timing suggests strategic positioning rather than coincidence. Administratum econometric models indicate that the resources allocated to the Minotaurs significantly exceed those provided to chapters of similar size and operational tempo. Their fleet assets, in particular, receive priority maintenance at naval facilities throughout the Segmentum Solar, and their requisition requests for specialized weaponry are approved at rates nearly triple the average for other chapters. This preferential treatment further supports the theory that they serve as the High Lord's preeminent enforcement tool. Particularly telling is the chapter's access to restricted archaeotech weapon systems that remain unavailable to many first founding chapters. The Minotaur's arsenal includes several patterns of Volkite weapons, graviton imploders, and vortex warheads that even chapters with extensive political influence struggle to procure. Such preferential access suggests a direct pipeline to the highest levels of the Adeptus Mechanicus, facilitated by the High Lords themselves. The chapter's early command structure further reinforces this theory of direct Terran control. Unlike most chapters where leadership ascends through internal promotion based on merit and service, fragmentary records suggest the earliest Minotaurs chapter masters were selected through external processes involving Terran authorities. The ascension of Asterion Moloc to chapter master in the late 38th millennium marks the first clearly documented internal promotion, possibly indicating a shift toward greater chapter autonomy, though still within carefully prescribed boundaries. What emerges from this constellation of evidence is the image of a chapter purpose built as the High Lords Executioners, a transhuman force created specifically to enforce compliance not merely among rebellious planetary governors or Xenos threats, but among other Astartes chapters that might stray too far from Terra's control. Their uncertain genetic lineage, brutal combat doctrine, and pattern of deployment all support this conclusion, as does their continued preferential treatment by Terran authorities. The deliberate obscuring of the Minotaur's origins serves this purpose perfectly. A chapter without clear Primarch lineage lacks the fraternal connections that might lead them to sympathize with other Astartes forces. Their ambiguous founding date prevents them from forming the brotherhood bonds that often develop between chapters created in the same founding. They exist as outsiders among outsiders, transhuman warriors separated even from their transhuman cousins, making them the perfect instruments for internal control within the Imperium's most elite military forces. The transformation of the Minotaurs from their original incarnation to their current form represents one of the most dramatic evolutions of any Space Marine chapter in Imperial history. Fragmentary records from the late 32nd millennium describe a force bearing the Minotaur's name and iconography, but with tactical doctrines and battlefield behavior markedly different from the bronze-armored enforcers now known to Imperial commanders. These early Minotaurs operated with a savagery that bordered on the uncontrollable. Battle reports from joint operations with other Imperial forces describe warriors in red-brown armor, adorned with primitive bull iconography, who fought with a frenzied aggression that occasionally endangered allied units. During the suppression of the Machavi sector, Imperial Guard commanders noted that Minotaurs Astartes would frequently abandon strategic objectives to pursue fleeing enemies, compromising carefully planned operations for the sake of complete enemy annihilation. Their organizational structure during this period appeared loosely based on Codex Astartes principles, but with significant deviations that suggested either deliberate rejection of Guilliman's teachings or a fundamental misunderstanding of their application. Company structures fluctuated wildly in size, with some battle groups operating at nearly double standard Codex strength, while others fielded barely enough Astartes to form two complete squads. Command hierarchies seemed equally fluid, with authority determined more by personal combat prowess than strategic acumen or experience. This earlier incarnation of the chapter maintained minimal communication with other Imperial forces, often arriving unannounced at conflict zones, engaging without coordination, and departing without formal debriefing. Their fleet assets consisted primarily of older vessel patterns, many dating back to the Great Crusade era, maintained in functional but aesthetically deteriorated condition. The chapter's flagship during this period, believed to be a retrofitted Gloriana-class vessel named Odjin Bull, was notorious for its unpredictable warp translation patterns and tendency to arrive at designated coordinates weeks before or after expected timeframes. Inquisitorial assessments from the period repeatedly flagged the chapter for monitoring, with several reports questioning their long-term genetic stability. Magos Biologists observers noted accelerated mutation rates in their gene seed, particularly affecting the catalepsian node and biscopia implants, potentially explaining both their erratic behavior and abnormal musculature. One particularly concerning report from Inquisitor Hezekiah Carmelis, dated to the mid-33rd millennium, recommended the chapter's dissolution and gene seed quarantine, though this recommendation was evidently overruled by higher authorities. The transition between this earlier incarnation and the modern Minotaurs coincides with a 17-year gap in Imperial records regarding their activities, beginning in the year 718 of the 36th millennium. When the chapter reappeared in documented Imperial campaigns in 735, they displayed markedly different tactical doctrines, organizational structure, and even physical characteristics. The timing of this transformation, occurring shortly after the Age of Apostasy, suggests deliberate intervention by the newly reorganized High Lords of Terra. The post-Reformation Minotaurs emerged as a force of cold, calculated brutality rather than uncontrolled savagery. Their armor, now uniformly burnished bronze with black and red detailing, bore standardized iconography featuring a stylized bull's head of ancient Terran design. Company structures adhered rigidly to Codex-approved numbers, though their internal organization continued to favor heavy weapons deployments and assault formations beyond typical Codex recommendations. Most significantly, their battlefield behavior shifted from unpredictable frenzy to methodical annihilation. During the cleansing of Azarath, Imperial observers noted Minotaurs' assault teams executing precisely coordinated attacks against rebel strongholds, with each action following predetermined strategic templates regardless of casualties sustained. Where the earlier chapter might have abandoned objectives to pursue fleeing enemies, these reformed Minotaurs maintained unwavering focus on primary mission parameters, engaging and eliminating targets in order of strategic priority rather than opportunity. The ascension of Lord Asterion Moloc to the position of Chapter Master marked the completion of this transformation and the beginning of the Minotaurs' modern era. The exact date of Moloc's elevation remains contested in Imperial records, with some sources placing it as early as the late 38th millennium, while others suggest a more recent appointment in the early 39th. What remains undisputed is the profound impact his leadership has had on the chapter's development and deployment patterns. Moloc himself presents an enigma, even by the secretive standards of Astartes' command. Standing significantly taller than even typical Space Marines, his imposing physical presence is enhanced by his distinctive armor, an ancient Tartaros patterned Terminator suit modified with archaic technologies and adorned with icons of Imperial authority rarely granted to Astartes commanders. His helmet, fashioned in the image of a snarling bull with glowing red eye lenses, conceals his face completely, with no confirmed records of any Imperial official outside the chapter having seen his actual features. Under Moloc's direction, the Minotaurs' combat doctrine evolved to emphasize overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Their preference for zone mortalis operations, combat within confined spaces such as spacecraft, hive structures, or underground complexes, became increasingly pronounced. During the Thanatos suppression, Minotaurs' assault teams demonstrated unprecedented proficiency in shipboard actions, clearing the rebel cruiser Vindictive Spirit deck by deck with a methodical efficiency that eliminated over 4,000 defenders while sustaining only 27 casualties. Perhaps most significantly, Moloc redirected the chapter's strategic focus toward operations against other transhuman forces. Where the pre-Reformation Minotaurs had primarily engaged in compliance actions against rebellious planetary governors and Xenos incursions, Moloc's chapter specialized in confronting renegade space marines, chaos warbands, and even loyalist chapters deemed problematic by Terran authorities. This specialization required significant modifications to standard Astartes training protocols, with Minotaur's battle brothers specifically conditioned to counter the tactics and capabilities of other space marines. The chapter's deployment frequency increased dramatically following the Age of Apostasy, with verified combat operations rising by approximately 73% compared to their pre-Reformation activity levels. This increased operational tempo coincided with a period of significant instability within the Imperium, as various factions sought to consolidate power following Goge Vandar's Reign of Blood. The Minotaurs' deployments during this period show a clear pattern of intervention against forces challenging Terran authority, regardless of those forces' stated loyalties or previous service records. The Badab War represents the most thoroughly documented example of this specialized role. When the Astral Claws chapter and their allies in the Maelstrom Zone declared independence from imperial taxation and oversight, the Minotaurs were among the first chapters deployed in response. Unlike other loyalist forces who approached the conflict with reluctance at the prospect of fighting brother Astartes, the Minotaurs engaged with methodical enthusiasm, specifically targeting Astral Claws command units and symbolic assets. Their assault on the Star Jackal, an Astral Claws strike cruiser, demonstrated their shipboard combat expertise. Minotaur's boarding parties breached the vessel's command deck within 30 minutes of engagement, neutralized its senior officers, and captured the ship largely intact, a feat of precision violence that impressed even veteran naval commanders. Throughout the conflict, they displayed intimate knowledge of Astral Claws' tactical doctrines, often countering maneuvers before they fully developed, suggesting extensive pre-mission intelligence gathering and analysis. The chapter's fleet-based organization represents another significant evolution under Moloc's leadership. While many non-codex chapters maintain substantial fleet assets, the Minotaur's naval force structure more closely resembles an expeditionary fleet from the Great Crusade era than a typical 41st Millennium chapter fleet. At its core stands the Didylos Crata, a massive vessel of uncertain classification that serves as the chapter's mobile fortress monastery. The Didylos Crata defies standard Imperial naval categorization. Approximately the size of a small star fort, its silhouette suggests a heavily modified Gloriana-class battleship, though with substantial structural alterations that indicate extensive reconstruction. Its outer hull bears evidence of ancient Terran shipbuilding techniques not seen since the early Great Crusade, including layered ceramite adamantium composite plating and gravitational stabilization, arrays of non-standard pattern. The vessel's weapon systems include several batteries that appear to be prototype configurations never widely implemented in Imperial naval forces, including accelerator mass drivers capable of launching projectiles at near relativistic speeds. Within this massive vessel, the Minotaurs maintain facilities that would typically be housed in a planetary fortress monastery. The ship contains extensive gene-seed storage chambers, training dojos for each company, manufacturing facilities for specialized equipment, and even environmentally sealed biodomes replicating various combat environments for training purposes. The command deck, known as the Aurochs Court, features a strategic planning chamber large enough to accommodate the chapter's entire officer corps, centered around a hololithic projection system of exceptional clarity and detail. Supporting the Didylos Crata is a fleet of approximately 25 primary combat vessels, including 4 battle barges of non-standard configuration and at least 12 strike cruisers. These ships universally bear signs of extensive modification, with many incorporating technologies rarely seen in 41st Millennium Imperial craft. The battle barge Fidelita's Lambda notably features a main accelerator cannon of Sicaran pattern, a weapon system supposedly discontinued following the Horus Heresy due to maintenance complexities and ammunition supply limitations. The chapter's fleet organization emphasizes tactical flexibility and independent operation. Unlike many chapter fleets that operate as unified battle groups, Minotaur's vessels frequently deploy individually or in small squadrons, allowing the chapter to maintain presence in multiple theater operations simultaneously. This dispersed deployment pattern enables their rapid response to emergent threats throughout the Imperium, particularly in the Segmentum Solar, where their operations remain concentrated. Fleet command falls to a specialized cadre within the chapter known as the Shipwrights, veteran Astartes with centuries of void warfare experience, who serve as both naval commanders and technical overseers. These officers typically undergo additional training with the Adeptus Mechanicus, focusing on archaic vessel systems and weapons technologies unique to the chapter's fleet. The most senior shipwright, bearing the title Lord Executioner, serves as Moloc's second in command for fleet operations and maintains authority over all chapter vessels when the chapter master is otherwise engaged. The modern Minotaur's combat operations reflect this enhanced fleet capability. During the Euxine incident, the chapter deployed elements to 3 separate subsectors simultaneously, coordinating complex void ground operations that isolated and eliminated secessionist forces before they could consolidate. The battle barge Didilo's Hammer conducted what naval tacticians later termed a decapitation orbit, utilizing precision bombardment capabilities to eliminate 78% of identified enemy command bunkers within a 17-minute window, while leaving surrounding civilian infrastructure largely intact. The relationship between the Minotaurs and the High Lords of Terra stands as perhaps the most direct connection between any Space Marine chapter and the Imperium's ruling council. While all Astartes chapters nominally serve the Emperor, and by extension, his representatives on the Senatorum Imperialis, most maintain significant operational independence. The Minotaurs, however, function as the High Lord's direct instrument, their bronze gauntlet reaching across the stars to enforce compliance where other methods have failed. Inquisitorial assessments of the chapter's command structure reveal an unusual reporting protocol that bypasses standard Adeptus Astartes chains of communication. Where most chapter masters coordinate with sector commanders, segmentum authorities, or specialized imperial agencies, Lord Asterion Moloc maintains encrypted Vox channels directly to the chamber of the Senatorum Imperialis. These communications utilize authentication codes normally reserved for Lords Militant of the Imperial Guard and Battle Fleet Admirals, granting the Minotaurs unprecedented access to the highest levels of Imperial authority. This direct line of communication manifests most visibly in the chapter's deployment patterns. Analysis of their movements throughout the 40th and 41st millennia reveals a consistent correlation with political shifts within the High Lord's chamber. When factions within the Senatorum gain or lose influence, the Minotaur's operational focus often adjusts accordingly. During the ascendancy of Lord Militant Heth in the early 40th millennium, for instance, the chapter conducted 17 compliance actions against worlds with economic ties to rival High Lords, actions ostensibly justified by minor tithe discrepancies that would typically warrant nothing more severe than administrative censure. The Chartist Captain's Revolt provides another illuminating example of this relationship. When the powerful merchant coalition began withholding crucial shipments from war zones to protest increased imperial tithe demands, 3 Minotaurs strike cruisers intercepted the Chartist flagship Abundant Provision within 24 hours of the High Lord's emergency session on the matter. The boarding action that followed left the vessel's command crew executed, its cargo confiscated, and a clear message delivered to the remaining Chartist captains. Compliance was non-negotiable. No formal request for Astartes intervention had been processed through standard Imperial channels. The Minotaurs had simply appeared precisely when and where the High Lords required their services. This operational responsiveness extends beyond mere timing to include targeting priorities that often align with political rather than strictly military objectives. During the Macharian heresy, when multiple systems previously brought to compliance by Lord Solar Macharius fell into rebellion, the Minotaurs focused their efforts not on the most militarily significant worlds, but on those whose governors had familial or political connections to High Lords who had fallen from favor. The strategic value of these targets often proved questionable, but their symbolic importance to Terra's internal power struggles was unmistakable. The chapter's privileged status manifests most tangibly in their access to war materiel and restricted weaponry. Standard Imperial protocol establishes strict allocation hierarchies for limited resources, with even first founding chapters occasionally facing supply constraints during periods of widespread conflict. The Minotaurs, however, consistently receive priority access to rare equipment, specialized ammunition, and archaeotech weapon systems that remain unavailable to many older and more storied chapters. This preferential treatment becomes particularly evident in their fleet maintenance schedules. Examination of Adeptus Mechanicus dock records from the Jupiter shipyards reveals that Minotaur's vessels receive servicing priority over all but battle fleet solar craft, with specialized Mechanicus Engineerium teams permanently assigned to their flagship. During the Gothic War, when shipyard capacity throughout the Imperium faced unprecedented strain, the battle barge Fidelitas Lambda underwent a complete refit of its dorsal lance batteries, while vessels from 3 other chapters remained in queue for critical repairs. The chapter's armory reflects this privileged supply status. Magos Dominus Hieronymus Tesla, following a rare opportunity to inspect Minotaur's equipment during joint operations against the Tyrannid splinter fleet Dagon, documented numerous weapons systems of restricted classification. His inventory noted multiple examples of Grav Centurion pattern Devastator platforms, Tartaros and Cataphracti pattern Terminator armor in quantities exceeding typical chapter allowances, and no fewer than 7 Sicaran pattern battle tanks, vehicles whose production templates are supposedly maintained by only a handful of Forge Worlds under Fabricator General Seal. Most telling was Tesla's discovery of a modified Fellblade Super Heavy tank in the Didilos Kratas lower hangar bay. This ancient war machine, designated Wrath of Knossos in ship records, incorporated weapons systems dating to the Great Crusade era, including Volkite carronade arrays and a neutron pulse projector of unknown pattern. The Magos noted that the vehicle's machine spirit bore authentication ciphers from the Martian Olympus Mons Forge Complex, a facility that has produced equipment exclusively for Terran authorities since the early 31st millennium. The chapter's access to such restricted materiel extends beyond conventional weapon systems to include specialized equipment designed specifically for operations against other space marines. Forge World Lucius records indicate that the Minotaurs maintain standing orders for power weapon components capable of disrupting the energy fields of other power weapons, technology developed during the Horus Heresy for Legions Astartes forces combating traitor Astartes. Similarly, their bolter ammunition includes variants of the Kraken Penetrator round, modified with disruption cores designed to defeat ceramite plate at optimal efficiency. This specialized anti-Astartes capability has been demonstrated repeatedly throughout the chapter's documented combat actions. The Badab War provided the most comprehensive display of their expertise in countering other space marines, but numerous smaller engagements reveal the same pattern. During the Darkfall incident, a Minotaur strike force intercepted and neutralized a company of Marines errant who had rejected inquisitorial authority after witnessing controversial purge protocols on Darkfall Prime. The engagement lasted less than 30 minutes, with the Minotaurs suffering only 4 casualties while eliminating or capturing 27 Marines errant Astartes. Their deployment against other Space Marine chapters represents the most controversial aspect of the Minotaur's service to the High Lords. While the Imperium has occasionally sanctioned actions against renegade chapters or those who have fallen to chaos, the Minotaurs have been implicated in operations against chapters whose only transgression appears to be political inconvenience or ideological independence. The Euxine incident stands as one of the most clearly documented examples. When the Doom Warriors chapter objected to administratum requisitioning of agri-worlds under their protection during a sector-wide famine, they found themselves facing not Imperial Guard forces or Adeptus Archives, but 3 companies of Minotaurs who made planetfall directly onto their fortress monastery. The ensuing battle resulted in the deaths of over 60 Doom Warriors Astartes, including their chapter master, an entire first company. Though officially recorded as a tragic misunderstanding of jurisdictional authority, internal Inquisition assessments suggest a deliberate show of force ordered directly by the then master of the administratum. Similarly, the Minotaurs' intervention during the Orphean War coincided with the near destruction of the Celestial Lions chapter. While no direct evidence links the Minotaurs to the friendly fire incidents that decimated the Lions, their presence in neighboring systems and rapid deployment to fill the void left by the Lions' decimation raises questions about their potential involvement. The timing aligned precisely with the Celestial Lions' increasingly vocal criticism of inquisitorial overreach in the region, criticism that disappeared along with most of their chapter. The political ramifications of these actions extend far beyond the immediate military outcomes. Each deployment of the Minotaurs against fellow Astartes sends a clear message throughout the Adeptus Astartes. No chapter, regardless of lineage or past glory, stands beyond the High Lord's reach. This creates a chilling effect that discourages chapters from questioning imperial policy or exercising the operational independence that many consider their traditional right. The Space Wolves' confrontation with the Inquisition following the First War for Armageddon represents a telling counterexample. When Logan Grimnar's chapter defended Armageddon's human population against inquisitorial purge orders, they possessed sufficient political capital and military might to resist censure. Had the Minotaurs been deployed instead of conventional inquisitorial forces, the outcome might have proven dramatically different, a fact surely not lost on chapter masters throughout the Imperium. This implicit threat creates a complex web of resentment and caution among other Space Marine chapters. The Minotaurs find themselves isolated from the brotherhood typically shared between Astartes forces, rarely invited to join multi-chapter campaigns, except when directly mandated by Terra. During joint operations, other chapters maintain noticeably formal communication protocols with Minotaur's forces, sharing only essential tactical information while withholding the camaraderie typically extended to brother Astartes. The Death Watch, which traditionally draws members from across the Adeptus Astartes, has historically received few Minotaurs' secondments despite their combat prowess. Those Minotaurs who do serve in the Watch report experiencing persistent suspicion from battle brothers of other chapters. Watch Fortress Iriok records note multiple instances of Minotaurs kill team members being excluded from non-essential mission planning discussions, with other Astartes expressing concerns about operational security when the High Lord's hounds are present. This isolation appears intentional rather than incidental to the chapter's purpose. A force designed to enforce compliance among other Space Marines cannot afford the fraternal bonds that might stay their hand when orders demand action against brother Astartes. The Minotaur's uncertain genetic lineage, secretive practices, and direct Terran oversight all serve to maintain this separation, ensuring their continued effectiveness as the High Lord's executioners. The chapter's role becomes particularly significant during periods of political transition within the Senatorum Imperialis. Following Lord Commander Militant Virginus Dolar's unexpected death in the year 876 of the 41st millennium, 3 Minotaurs strike cruisers established orbit around Terra itself, a deployment location normally prohibited to Astartes vessels, except under the most extraordinary circumstances. They remained in position throughout the contentious selection of Dolar's successor, their presence serving as a visible reminder of the consequences should political maneuvering exceed acceptable boundaries. While the Minotaur's privileged status grants them extraordinary operational latitude, it also imposes significant constraints on their autonomy. Unlike chapters that might choose to focus on particular threats based on their own strategic assessments, the Minotaurs operate almost exclusively at the High Lord's direction. Analysis of their deployment patterns reveals few instances of independent action, with nearly all documented operations correlating to specific directives from Terra. This control extends to their recruitment practices. Where most chapters maintain traditional ties to specific worlds or regions from which they draw aspirants, the Minotaurs appear to receive regular transfers of pre-screened candidates delivered directly to the Didylos Crata by unmarked transport vessels. Janitors from the Adeptus Mechanicus accompany these shipments, suggesting a level of oversight in the chapter's gene seed implementation that exceeds standard Astartes protocols. The Minotaur's arrival in the Maelstrom Zone during the Badab War represented one of the most decisive deployments of Astartes forces in the conflict. Unlike many loyalist chapters who entered the theater with reluctance, the Minotaurs translated into the Badab sector in 907 with unmistakable purpose and cold efficiency. Their fleet, comprising the battle barge Didylos Crata, 2 strike cruisers, the Lord of Wrath and Stymphlos, and 6 escort vessels, arrived without prior communication to other Imperial forces already engaged in the conflict. Lord Commander Kareb Kuln of the Red Scorpions, serving as overall commander of the loyalist Astartes contingent, received only a terse astropathic message 12 hours before the Minotaurs' arrival. The message contained deployment coordinates and combat readiness status, but offered no strategic input requests or command integration protocols typically observed when Astartes forces join ongoing operations. This unilateral approach immediately created tension with the existing command structure, particularly with the Fire Hawks and Marines errant chapters, who had suffered significant casualties, establishing the Imperial foothold in the region. The Minotaurs' deployment pattern revealed their operational priorities from the outset. Rather than reinforcing existing Imperial positions or targeting the most strategically valuable Secessionist holdings, they directed their full attention toward the Lamenters chapter. This targeting priority appeared predetermined rather than tactically responsive, suggesting specific directives from Terra regarding which Secessionist forces warranted their specialized attention. Asterion Moloc established his command post aboard the Didilos Krata rather than at the Loyalist headquarters on Sagin, further emphasizing the chapter's operational independence. From this mobile command center, he orchestrated a systematic campaign against the Lamenters' void assets with a precision that demonstrated extensive pre-mission intelligence gathering. The Minotaurs possessed detailed knowledge of Lamenters' fleet movements, patrol patterns, and even communication protocols, information that other Loyalist forces had struggled to obtain despite months of prior engagement. The Void War against the Lamenters began with a precisely coordinated ambush near the Vaenaya asteroid belt. 3 Minotaur strike cruisers, operating with active auger systems dampened to minimal output, positioned themselves along projected patrol routes of Lamenters' escort vessels. When the Lamenters' frigates Mater Suspiratum and Daughter of Tempests entered the designated engagement zone, the Minotaurs executed a synchronized attack that crippled both vessels before they could transmit distress signals. The precision of this operation suggested not merely tactical excellence, but intimate familiarity with Lamenters' void doctrine. Following this initial success, the Minotaurs implemented what naval tacticians later termed a constriction pattern around Lamenters' controlled space. Rather than engaging in direct fleet actions against superior numbers, they conducted targeted raids against supply vessels, communication relays, and isolated warships. Each operation further restricted the Lamenters' operational sphere while minimizing Minotaurs' casualties. Within 17 days of their arrival, they had effectively reduced the Lamenters' patrol zone by 60% without committing to a single large-scale fleet engagement. This methodical approach forced the Lamenters into an untenable strategic position. As their supply lines contracted and communication became increasingly fragmented, Chapter Master Malik Amphoros faced the choice between concentrating his fleet for protection or maintaining his strategic objectives. When he ultimately consolidated his remaining vessels around the Lamenters' bark Mater Lacrimarum, the Minotaurs seized the opportunity they had methodically created. The assault on the Mater Lacrimarum stands as one of the most clinically executed boarding actions in recorded Imperial naval history. The Minotaurs committed 12 Cestus assault rams and 28 Thunderhawk gunships in the initial wave, each assigned specific entry points based on detailed schematics of the Lamenters' vessel. Unlike conventional boarding operations that typically focus on command decks and engine compartments, the Minotaurs targeted the ship's chapter shrine, apothecarian, and geneseed storage facilities with priority designation. Terminator armored veterans of the Minotaurs' first company, led by Asterion Moloc himself, spearheaded the assault on the ship's reclusiam. Surviving Lamenters' accounts describe the chapter master as an unstoppable force, his relic glaive black spear cutting through Terminator armored Lamenters with horrifying efficiency. A Lamenters chaplain who witnessed the assault noted that Moloc moved with mechanical precision, each stroke calculated to maximize lethality against Astartes' physiology, suggesting specialized training in anti-space marine combat techniques. While Moloc's assault team engaged the ship's defenders in close-quarters combat, specialized Minotaurs extraction teams breached the vessel's apothecarian complex. These squads, equipped with specialized melta-charges designed to breach ceramite-reinforced vault doors without damaging the contents within, systematically secured the Lamentor's gene seed reserves, chapter relics, and ancient technological artifacts. Each item was cataloged with remarkable efficiency before being transferred to designated extraction craft, suggesting a pre-planned acquisition protocol rather than opportunistic looting. The defense mounted by the Lamentors proved valiant but ultimately futile against the Minotaur's specialized assault tactics. The doomed chapter had trained for void combat against conventional enemies, human rebels, Xenos forces, even Chaos warbands, but found themselves unprepared for the Minotaur's intimate knowledge of Astartes' defensive protocols. Boarding teams breached compartments through maintenance shafts deemed too narrow for Astartes' passage, employed jamming frequencies that specifically disrupted Space Marine helmet vox patterns, and utilized specialized breaching charges calibrated to penetrate the exact thickness of internal bulkheads on Astartes' vessels. Within 7 hours of the assault's commencement, the Minotaurs had secured control of 80% of the Mater Lacrimarum, including all critical systems and the chapter's sacred repositories. The cost proved substantial for both sides. The Minotaurs lost 78 battle brothers in the engagement, while the Lamentors suffered approximately 120 casualties, including their Master of Sanctity and Chief Apothecary. More devastating than these losses, however, was the seizure of nearly 70% of the Lamentors' stored gene seed, crippling their ability to rebuild their numbers after the conflict. The methodical precision continued as the Minotaurs secured their prizes. Each captured gene seed container was transferred to specialized stasis units aboard designated Minotaurs vessels, accompanied by apothecaries maintaining strict contamination protocols. Chapter relics, including the Lamentor's sacred standard banner of tears and the ancient power sword glaive of sorrow, were cataloged and secured in magnetically sealed reliquaries. Even damaged items received careful preservation treatment, suggesting these artifacts were considered evidence rather than merely trophies. Throughout the operation, Minotaur's command maintained comprehensive documentation of all seized materials. Picked captures taken during the boarding action show Minotaur's officers recording serial designations from weapon systems, taking material samples from damaged equipment, and creating detailed inventories of ammunition types found in Lamentor's armories. This level of documentation exceeded standard battlefield salvage procedures, resembling instead the evidential preservation techniques employed by inquisitorial investigation teams. The aftermath of the Mater Lacrimarum assault effectively ended the Lamentor's participation in the Badab War. With their flagship captured, gene seed reserves depleted, and command structure decimated, Chapter Master Foros had no choice but to signal his surrender to Loyalist forces. The terms imposed upon the Lamentors proved harsh, but stopped short of the complete chapter extinction that many expected. They were sentenced to a 100-year penitent crusade, forbidden from recruiting new members until this sentence was completed, a punishment that left them perpetually undermanned and on the verge of extinction. With the Lamentors neutralized, the Minotaurs shifted their attention to the remaining secessionist forces, though with noticeably less focus and intensity. Their operations against the Mantis Warriors and Executioners chapters followed conventional Astartes engagement protocols rather than the specialized anti-Astartes techniques employed against the Lamentors. This operational shift further supports the theory that the Minotaurs entered the conflict with specific directives regarding priority targets. The Minotaurs' approach to war materiel seizure from these other secessionist chapters proved equally revealing. While they claimed considerable salvage from Mantis Warriors and Executioners vessels through right of conquest, these acquisitions lacked the methodical documentation and specialized handling observed during the Lamentors' operations. Equipment was evaluated primarily for combat utility rather than evidential value, with functional weapons and armor redistributed to Minotaur's armories according to standard battlefield salvage protocols. The chapter's behavior during the final phases of the Badab War demonstrated their unique position within the Imperial command structure. when Lord Commander Kulm convened a strategic council to plan the final assault on Badab Primaris, Asterion Moloc attended but offered minimal tactical input. Instead, he informed the assembled commanders that the Minotaurs would be withdrawing the majority of their forces from the theater, having accomplished their primary objectives. This unilateral decision, made without consultation with the overall Imperial command, would have been considered unacceptable insubordination from any other chapter. The Minotaurs departed the Badab sector in early 912, taking with them an extensive haul of captured materiel and biological samples. Their fleet translated into the warp without formal departure protocols, leaving only a single strike cruiser to represent their interests during the final pacification of the region. This abrupt withdrawal occurred precisely as the focus of the conflict shifted from Astartes versus Astartes engagements to the purging of chaos influence from Badab Primaris, further evidence that their mission parameters centered specifically on neutralizing renegade space marines rather than addressing the broader strategic objectives of the campaign. Post-conflict analysis by Ordo Hereticus investigators revealed the true extent of the Minotaurs' acquisitions during their Badab War deployment. Beyond the expected tally of weapons, vehicles, and equipment, they had secured extensive biological samples from fallen secessionist Astartes, detailed Vox logs of Lamentor's command communications, and complete technical schematics of Lamentor's fleet assets. Most significantly, they obtained intact SDC fragments from the Lamentor's Techmarines archives relating to specialized life support systems designed for Astartes physiology, technology with potential applications for addressing gene seed degradation issues. The final inventory of seized chapter relics proved particularly extensive. From the Lamentors alone, the Minotaurs acquired 17 artifacts designated as items of significant chapter heritage, including 3 dating to the Great Crusade era. These included the Chalice of Bitter Mercy, a pre-heresy artifact allegedly used in the earliest gene seed implantation rituals of the chapter's founding, and the Scrolls of Lamentations, containing the earliest recorded history of the chapter, including details of their founding that had never been shared with Imperial authorities. The strategic impact of the Minotaurs' intervention in the Badab War extended far beyond the immediate military outcomes. Their systematic dismantling of the Lamentor's chapter served as a powerful demonstration of the consequences awaiting Astartes forces who defied Imperial authority, regardless of their motivations or past loyalties. The methodical seizure of gene seed reserves sent a particularly chilling message throughout the Adeptus Astartes. Even a chapter's future genetic legacy remained subject to Imperial seizure should they step beyond acceptable boundaries of autonomy. The Minotaurs' chapter's visual identity stands as one of the most distinctive and immediately recognizable among the Adeptus Astartes, combining ancient Terran symbolism with practical battlefield considerations. Their primary armor coloration, a burnished bronze that gleams with metallic luster under battlefield conditions, represents a deliberate choice that serves both symbolic and tactical purposes. This bronze base provides exceptional durability against corrosive environments while offering moderate light absorption properties that balance visibility with stealth considerations. The bronze coloration connects directly to the chapter's namesake, evoking the ancient Terran myth of the bronze bull constructed to house the fearsome Minotaur of legend. This reference to pre-Imperial mythology appears deliberate rather than coincidental, as numerous other elements of the chapter's heraldry draw from the same cultural wellspring. Techmarines within the chapter maintain the distinctive finish through a complex application process involving actual metallic compounds rather than simple pigments, creating armor that functionally incorporates bronze elements within its ceramite structure. Complementing this bronze base are secondary colors of deep crimson and matte black, applied to specific armor components in patterns that follow practical battlefield logic rather than purely aesthetic considerations. Shoulder pad rims, knee guards, and arm joints typically receive the crimson treatment, marking potential weak points in the armor and creating visual disruption that complicates enemy targeting. The black components, most notably applied to power pack housings, ammunition pouches, and sensor arrays, reduce reflectivity of operational equipment that might otherwise compromise stealth operations. The symbolism of these color choices extends beyond tactical considerations. The crimson elements evoke the blood sacrifices associated with the ancient Minotaur myth, while the black components represent the darkness of the labyrinth in which the creature dwelled. Together with the bronze primary color, this scheme creates a visual narrative that reinforces the chapter's identity as hunters who thrive in confined spaces, emerging from darkness to strike with lethal precision. Armor markings follow a system that superficially resembles Codex standards, but incorporates significant deviations that reflect the chapter's unique operational structure. Company designations appear as stylized numerals rendered in black upon the right shoulder pad, surrounded by geometric patterns resembling ancient Terran labyrinth designs. These labyrinthine borders increase in complexity with the Battle Brothers' experience level, with veterans displaying intricate patterns that can take years for even fellow Astartes to fully decipher. Squad designations manifest not through standard numerical systems, but via stylized bull icons in varying poses, each representing specific tactical roles. Assault specialists bear the charging bull, its head lowered and horns prominent. Tactical squads display the vigilant bull, head raised and alert. Devastator teams carry the image of the planted bull, its stance wide and immovable. These icons appear on the left knee plate rather than the standard shoulder position, making them visible to squad members during close formation operations in confined environments. The chapter's primary iconography, the bull's head, has evolved significantly since their earliest recorded appearances. Ancient Pict captures from the 32nd millennium show a relatively simplistic bull silhouette, rendered in red upon their earlier rust-colored armor. The modern iteration displays dramatically increased sophistication, featuring a stylized bull's head rendered in black with red eyes, incorporating subtle anatomical details that suggest an actual death mask rather than merely a symbolic representation. This primary icon appears most prominently on the left shoulder pauldron, rendered in stark black against the bronze background with the distinctive red eyes serving as focal points. The design incorporates subtle asymmetry, with the right horn extending slightly longer than the left, a feature that chapter artificers maintain represents the unpredictability of the chapter in combat. Veteran members earn the right to add personalized embellishments to their shoulder iconography, typically in the form of additional geometric patterns surrounding the bull motif that record significant campaigns or notable kills. Beyond these standardized elements, the Minotaurs display an unusual degree of individualization in their armor embellishments. Unlike chapters that maintain rigid uniformity, Minotaur's battle brothers are permitted, even encouraged, to modify their armor with trophies and decorative elements that reflect their personal combat experiences. These additions typically incorporate bovine motifs, vertebrae carved into grip sections of weapons, horn fragments inlaid into knife handles, and skull fragments embedded in shoulder pauldrons. The most distinctive feature of Minotaur's armor modifications appears in their helmet designs. While basic tactical helmets follow standard Mark 7 or Mark 8 patterns, veterans frequently modify their helmets to incorporate stylized bull horns or crest extensions. These modifications serve both ceremonial and practical purposes. The reinforced horns can function as close-quarters weapons in extreme situations, while simultaneously creating an imposing psychological effect on enemies. The chapter's most veteran members often display helmets completely redesigned to resemble snarling bull heads, with respirator grills modified to resemble flared nostrils and eye lenses tinted deep crimson. Asterion Moloc's personal heraldry represents the pinnacle of this aesthetic. His Tartaros patterned Terminator armor, ancient even by the standards of relic equipment, has been extensively modified with layered bronze plating over its ceramic components. The bull motif reaches its most extreme expression in his helmet design, which abandons standard Terminator helmet architecture in favor of a complete bull's head rendition, featuring elongated horns and multiple red eye lenses arranged to create an unsettling, inhuman appearance. The overall effect creates an imposing silhouette that combines ancient Terran mythological references with transhuman intimidation factors. The chapter's officers display rank through subtle variations in their armor decoration rather than through standardized insignia. Company captains incorporate silver detailing along their helmet crests and pauldron edges, while chaplains replace the standard skull helmet with a bronze bull skull design unique to the chapter. Apothecaries maintain the traditional white arm gauntlet, but add bronze studs along its length, with each stud reportedly representing 100 geneseed collections performed in combat conditions. The Minotaur's preference for close quarters combat manifests clearly in their weapons' aesthetics. Their close combat weapons, particularly power axes and mauls, feature oversized proportions compared to those of other chapters, with heavier striking heads and reinforced hafts designed for maximum impact force. Power weapon energy fields are typically calibrated to produce a distinctive amber glow, rather than the blue or white manifestations common among other chapters, creating a visual effect reminiscent of heated bronze when activated. Bolters and other ranged weapons receive similar treatment, with standard patterns modified to incorporate additional weight in the stock and barrel assemblies. These modifications reduce maximum effective range by approximately 7–12% compared to standard patterns, but significantly increase stopping power and penetration at close to medium ranges. Ammunition feeds are frequently upgraded with high-capacity systems, reflecting the chapter's tactical preference for overwhelming firepower in confined environments where resupply may prove difficult. The labyrinthine motif appears consistently throughout these weapon modifications. Bolter casings feature etched maze patterns that serve as both grip enhancement and devotional scripture. Combat knives incorporate serration patterns based on ancient labyrinth designs rather than standard tactical patterns. Even ammunition is not exempt from this aesthetic treatment. Bolt shells recovered from Minotaur's operations often bear microscopically small maze patterns etched into their casings, visible only under significant magnification. Perhaps the most distinctive element of Minotaur's equipment appears in their unique approach to Terminator armor. The chapter maintains an unusually large complement of Terminator suits, with estimates suggesting between 7,100 operational suits compared to the 30–40 typical of a Codex-compliant chapter. More significantly, these suits incorporate extensive modifications collectively known as the Aegis pattern that distinguish them from standard Indomitus or Tartaros configurations. The Aegis pattern modifications focus on three primary areas: additional frontal armor plating, enhanced power distribution systems, and specialized close quarters combat attachments. The frontal reinforcement, consisting of overlapping bronze plates secured to the standard ceramite chest housing, provides approximately 23% increased protection against direct attacks at the cost of reduced lateral mobility. Power distribution enhancements incorporate additional capacitors throughout the suit, allowing for sustained operation of energy-intensive systems like power weapons and teleportation homers without typical performance degradation. Most visibly, Aegis pattern Terminator suits feature distinctive helmet modifications that incorporate sensor arrays typically reserved for specialized assault units. These arrays, appearing as elongated horns extending from the standard helmet design, provide enhanced awareness in Zone Mortalis environments, particularly in detecting movement through solid barriers and around corners. Combined with integrated Auspex systems calibrated specifically for detecting other Astartes life signs, these modifications create Terminator units uniquely suited for anti-space marine operations. The artificer work displayed on these Terminator suits reveals a distinctive stylistic approach that sets Minotaur's artisans apart from other chapters' traditions. Where Ultramarines' artificers favor clean lines and classical proportions, and Blood Angels emphasize artistic beauty in their modifications, Minotaur's artificers prioritize brutal functionality, enhanced by deliberately intimidating aesthetic choices. Armor joints feature exposed hydraulic components rather than concealed systems, power cables receive minimal sheathing to display their energy potential, and weapon housings incorporate jagged edges where standard patterns would feature smooth contours. This aesthetic extends to their dreadnoughts, which display some of the most extensive modifications seen among Loyalist chapters. The Minotaurs maintain approximately 20 operational dreadnoughts, an unusually high number that includes several ancient patterns rarely seen in active service. Their Contemptor dreadnoughts, in particular, feature extensive bronze plating over standard ceramic components, with helmet housings modified to resemble snarling bullheads, complete with metallic horn protrusions that function as close combat weapons. The chapter's vehicles follow similar modification patterns, with Predator tanks, Land Raiders, and Rhino transports all receiving the distinctive bronze base coat supplemented with red and black detailing. Vehicle hulls typically feature etched labyrinth patterns across armor plates, creating visual complexity that breaks up the vehicle's silhouette while reinforcing the chapter's mythological associations. Weapon housings receive particular attention, with standard patterns modified to incorporate bull motifs, most notably in the redesigned frontal glacis plates of Vindicator siege tanks, which feature stylized bullhead ramming surfaces. The Minotaur's fleet vessels extend this aesthetic to void operations. Their ships maintain standard Imperial Navy hull configurations, but feature extensive external modifications, most notably in their prow sections. Where standard Imperial vessels typically feature the Aquila or other Imperial iconography, Minotaur's ships display massive bronze bullhead projections, some extending nearly 50 meters from the primary hull structure. These modifications serve both symbolic and practical purposes. The reinforced prows provide additional protection during ramming maneuvers, a tactic the chapter employs with unusual frequency during void engagements. Internal ship aesthetics reflect the same principles applied to their armor and weapons. Corridor junctions feature bronze bullhead sculptures that conceal automated defense systems. Command thrones incorporate horn motifs in their construction. Even crew quarters display the ubiquitous labyrinth patterns etched into bulkhead surfaces, creating an environment that constantly reinforces the chapter's mythological identity. The most sacred spaces within Minotaur's vessels, particularly the Reclusiam chambers aboard the Didylos Crata, represent the purest expression of their aesthetic philosophy. These chambers feature walls lined with actual bronze plates rather than ceramite painted to resemble the metal. Lighting systems create a perpetual amber glow reminiscent of ancient Terran fire pits. The central chamber reportedly contains a massive bronze bull construct standing over 9 meters tall, beneath which chapter ceremonies of initiation and advancement take place. The cumulative effect of these aesthetic choices creates a chapter identity that simultaneously evokes ancient mythology and projects transhuman lethality. The bronze and red color scheme ensures high visibility on the battlefield. The Minotaurs make no attempt to conceal their presence once deployed, preferring instead to leverage the psychological impact of their appearance. Their distinctive modifications, particularly to Terminator armor and close combat weapons, create silhouettes instantly recognizable to both allies and enemies, establishing a visual signature that reinforces their reputation for close quarters lethality. This visual identity serves practical strategic purposes beyond mere tradition or intimidation. The distinctive appearance ensures immediate recognition during complex multi-force Imperial operations, preventing friendly fire incidents and establishing clear operational boundaries. More subtly, the unique aesthetic serves as a constant reminder to other Imperial forces, particularly other Astartes chapters, of the Minotaur's unique relationship with Terran authorities and their specialized role within the Imperium's military structure. The maintenance of this distinctive heraldry receives priority attention within the chapter's operational protocols. Dedicated artificer teams accompany all major deployments, equipped with specialized tools and material components to repair damage to iconographic elements alongside functional systems. Battle Brothers are expected to maintain their personal heraldry with the same diligence applied to weapons maintenance, with regular inspections, ensuring adherence to chapter aesthetic standards even during extended campaigns. The Minotaur's approach to warfare represents one of the most distinctive and specialized combat methodologies among loyalist Astartes chapters. At its core lies a philosophy of overwhelming force applied with surgical precision, a seemingly contradictory approach that combines the raw destructive power typically associated with less disciplined chapters with the calculated efficiency of more strategically minded forces. This unique doctrinal balance manifests most clearly in their shock assault tactics, which have become their battlefield signature across countless Imperial compliance operations. Unlike chapters such as the White Scars, who employ lightning strikes followed by rapid disengagement, or the Raven Guard, who prioritize stealth and precision over direct confrontation, the Minotaurs employ what Imperial tacticians term momentum-based saturation assault. This approach begins with concentrated force application against a single critical node in enemy defenses, using overwhelming firepower to create an initial breach point. Once this breach is established, they immediately commit disproportionately large forces to exploit it, rapidly expanding the zone of engagement while maintaining constant pressure on defensive fallback positions. The Euxine campaign provides a textbook example of this methodology in practice. When facing heavily fortified rebel positions on Euxine 4, the Minotaurs deployed 12 land raiders and 24 rhino transports in the initial assault wave, approximately triple the armored support typically allocated for similar operations by Codex adherent chapters. This overwhelming force concentrated on a single defensive bastion rather than distributing attacks across multiple targets. Within 17 minutes of engagement, the bastion's outer defenses collapsed under the concentrated firepower, creating a breach point barely wide enough for 2 vehicles to enter abreast. Rather than securing this position and establishing a formal beachhead as tactical doctrine would typically dictate, Captain Thowell immediately committed the chapter's entire 3rd Company through the narrow breach, accepting significant casualties from flanking fire to maintain assault momentum. This seemingly reckless commitment of forces created such pressure on interior defensive positions that rebel commanders had no opportunity to seal the breach or establish secondary defensive lines. Within 4 hours, a planetary defense network designed to withstand months of conventional siege had completely collapsed. This willingness to accept higher than average casualties to maintain offensive momentum represents a defining characteristic of Minotaur's operations. Post-action analyses from joint Imperial campaigns indicate the chapter routinely sustains casualty rates 15–30% higher than other Astartes forces engaged in comparable operations. However, these same analyses note that overall campaign durations under Minotaur's assault direction typically decrease by 35–60% compared to Codex standard approaches, suggesting their high casualty methodology ultimately preserves Imperial resources through rapid conflict resolution. The Minotaur's preference for Zone Mortalis operations, combat within confined spaces such as spacecraft, hive structures, or underground complexes, represents a specialized application of their broader combat philosophy, where many chapters treat such environments as challenging conditions to be navigated with caution. The Minotaurs actively seek out opportunities to engage enemies in confined spaces where their specialized training and equipment provide significant tactical advantages. Their Zone Mortalis expertise manifests most clearly in void warfare scenarios. During the Badab War, Minotaur's boarding teams demonstrated the ability to secure enemy vessels in approximately 40% less time than comparable forces from other chapters. This efficiency stems from specialized training protocols that emphasize rapid breach and clear techniques specifically calibrated for starship internal architectures. Battle Brothers train extensively in simulated ship environments aboard the Didylos Krata, with training scenarios incorporating actual recovered deck plans from various vessel classes they might encounter in combat operations. The chapter's approach to ship boarding actions differs significantly from standard Imperial Navy procedures. Where naval boarding parties typically secure critical systems in sequence, bridge, engine compartments, weapons controls, Minotaur's teams employ what they term arterial seizure patterns. This methodology prioritizes securing primary movement corridors rather than specific compartments, effectively taking control of a vessel's circulatory system before targeting its vital organs. Once these arterial routes are secured, compartmentalized resistance becomes isolated and can be eliminated systematically without threatening overall operational success. This specialized void warfare capability extends beyond boarding actions to include fleet engagement tactics. The Minotaur's fleet demonstrates unusual proficiency in close-range void combat, frequently closing to engagement distances considered recklessly short by naval tacticians. During the Gothic War, the battle barge Fidelitas Lambda engaged the renegade cruiser Sightless Wanderer at a range of less than 5,000 kilometers, effectively point-blank range for void warfare, enabling boarding teams to deploy via short-range teleportation while simultaneously delivering devastating broadside fire. The chapter's expertise in confined space operations translates equally well to planetary environments with similar characteristics. Hive cities, underground fortress complexes, and dense urban environments play to their strengths in close-quarters combat and rapid room-clearing techniques. During the pacification of Hive Cybulus on Scintilla, Minotaur's kill teams navigated maintenance ducts and service corridors considered too confined for effective Astartes deployment, emerging directly into enemy command centers and eliminating leadership elements before broader resistance could organize. This specialization in Zone Mortali's operations directly informs their equipment preferences, particularly their extensive use of Terminator armor. The Minotaurs maintain Terminator suits for approximately 15–18% of their total fighting strength, nearly double the typical allocation for a Codex-compliant chapter. These suits, predominantly of the ancient Tartaros pattern, receive extensive modifications to enhance their effectiveness in confined environments, including reinforced frontal armor, enhanced auto-senses calibrated for low light conditions, and specialized close combat attachments designed for maximum lethality in narrow corridors. The deployment of these Terminator units follows distinctive patterns that differ from typical Astartes doctrine. Rather than reserving Terminator armored veterans exclusively for the most critical objectives, the Minotaurs frequently use them as frontline breakthrough elements in standard operations. During the Damocles Gulf campaign, they deployed a full 30-man Terminator formation as the primary assault force against Tau defensive positions, using their virtually unstoppable momentum to create breach points for conventional forces to exploit. This liberal use of what most chapters consider precious assets reflects both their preferential supply status and their tactical emphasis on overwhelming initial force application. The chapter's Terminator formations operate in specialized units known as Gorgon squads, 5-man teams with centuries of experience fighting in cohesion. Unlike standard Terminator squads that typically deploy with uniform weaponry, Gorgon squads incorporate specialized role distribution. A typical configuration includes 2 members with lightning claws for close combat dominance, 2 with combined bolters and power fists for range support and structural breaching, and 1 with a heavy weapon, typically a heavy flamer or Reaper auto cannon, for area suppression. This mixed armament approach provides tactical flexibility in confined environments where squad separation is often impossible. Supporting these elite Terminator formations are the chapter's veteran cadres, organized into units that deviate significantly from Codex specifications. The Minotaur's veteran structure centers around formations known as Gnosis Brotherhoods, 30-man units composed of veterans drawn from multiple companies rather than forming a distinct first company as specified in the Codex Astartes. These brotherhoods operate as independent strike forces, capable of conducting operations without additional support when necessary or serving as command cadres for larger deployments. Each Gnosis Brotherhood specializes in specific combat environments or tactical approaches. The Brotherhood of the Ashen Horn focuses on urban warfare and Hive city operations. The Crimson Traverse Brotherhood specializes in void operations and ship-to-ship actions. The Sundered Gate Brotherhood concentrates on siege warfare and fortification reduction. This specialized approach allows the chapter to deploy veteran forces precisely calibrated to specific operational requirements rather than employing a generalist veteran company as prescribed by the Codex. Perhaps the most distinctive element of the Minotaur's force organization is their extensive use of ancient contemptor pattern dreadnoughts. Where most chapters maintain perhaps 2 or 3 of these venerable war machines, the Minotaurs field at least 12 operational contemptors, an unprecedented number that suggests either remarkable preservation capabilities or access to production facilities thought lost to the wider Imperium. These dreadnoughts, bearing the designation Tauros pattern, incorporate modifications unseen in those operated by other chapters, including reinforced frontal armor, specialized close combat attachments, and enhanced sensory arrays. The Tauros pattern modifications focus particularly on enhancing the dreadnought's effectiveness in Zone Mortalis operations. Standard Castroferum pattern dreadnoughts often struggle in confined environments due to their width and limited maneuverability. The Tauros modifications include articulation enhancements that enable more precise movement in narrow corridors, specialized breaching attachments that can clear structural obstacles, and targeting systems optimized for short-range engagement, where conventional targeting solutions might prove impractical. The chapter deploys these ancient war machines with unusual frequency compared to other Astartes forces. While most chapters reserve dreadnoughts for only the most critical engagements due to their irreplaceable nature, the Minotaurs commit them to relatively standard operations as front-line assault elements. During the Badab War, they deployed no fewer than 5 contemptor dreadnoughts in the assault on the Lamentor's Bark Mater Lacrimarum, a concentration of ancient war machines that astonished other loyalist commanders. This liberal deployment of precious war assets extends to the chapter's use of other archaic weaponry. The Minotaur's arsenal includes numerous weapon systems considered extremely rare or entirely lost by most Imperial organizations. Their armories contain functional Volkite weapons in numbers unseen outside the Mechanicus' most secured vaults, including man-portable Volkite culverins and vehicle-mounted Volkite destructors. These heat-based weapons, largely phased out of Imperial service following the Horus Heresy due to production complexities, provide devastating capabilities against both infantry formations and light vehicles. Similarly, the chapter maintains an extensive collection of graviton weapons, devices that manipulate gravitational forces to crush targets regardless of armor protection. Standard tactical marines frequently deploy with graviton guns for anti-armor operations, while their Devastator squads utilize the larger graviton cannons capable of immobilizing even super heavy vehicles. These weapons prove particularly effective in Zone Mortalis operations, where their ability to crush targets without explosive backblast prevents the structural damage that conventional anti-armor weapons might cause in confined environments. The Minotaur's access to such archaic weaponry raises significant questions about their supply chain and political connections. Production of Volkite technology remains extremely limited even on Mars itself, while graviton weapons require specialized manufacturing processes available to only a handful of Forge worlds. The chapter's ability to maintain and deploy these weapons in significant numbers suggests either direct supply lines to these restricted production facilities or access to stockpiles dating back to the Great Crusade era, both possibilities implying high-level political patronage beyond that enjoyed by typical Astartes chapters. The chapter's combat doctrine incorporates these specialized assets into a cohesive operational approach that emphasizes 3 primary tactical phases. The initial phase, designated Breach, focuses on creating entry points into enemy defensive systems using overwhelming firepower. Terminator formations, contemptor dreadnoughts, and heavy armor elements concentrate on a single target point, applying maximum force to create an exploitable weakness regardless of casualties sustained in the process. Once this breach is established, the operation enters the flood phase, with standard tactical and assault squads pouring through the created opening to establish control of arterial movement corridors. These forces advance with minimal concern for securing their flanks, focusing instead on maintaining forward momentum to prevent enemy forces from establishing secondary defensive positions. Supporting elements follow closely behind, neutralizing pockets of resistance bypassed by the initial advance and securing critical junctions to maintain supply lines. The final phase, Purge, involves the systematic elimination of remaining resistance once primary objectives are secured. This phase typically sees the deployment of specialized units, including destroyer squads equipped with rad weapons, phosphex bombs, and other restricted munitions designed for area denial and comprehensive target elimination. The Minotaurs execute this phase with clinical efficiency, methodically clearing sectors according to predetermined patterns that leave no potential hiding places unsearched. This three-phase approach demonstrates remarkable effectiveness against both conventional and transhuman opponents. When facing standard human forces, the sheer shock value of the initial breach phase often collapses morale before the operation progresses to subsequent stages. Against more resilient opponents such as other Astartes or Xenos forces, the methodology prevents the establishment of coherent defensive responses by maintaining constant pressure across multiple engagement vectors. The effectiveness of this doctrine becomes particularly evident when examining the chapter's record against other Space Marines. During the Badab War, Minotaur's forces consistently outperformed other Loyalist chapters in direct engagements with Secessionist Astartes. Their specialized training in countering standard Astartes tactics, combined with their willingness to sustain casualties to maintain operational momentum, created a combat approach that Secessionist forces struggled to counter effectively. This specialization in anti-Astartes operations extends to their training protocols. Unlike most chapters that primarily train against simulated Xenos or heretic forces, the Minotaurs devote approximately 40% of their combat drills to scenarios involving engagement with other Space Marines. These exercises include detailed simulations of other chapters' known tactical doctrines, with designated Minotaurs units adopting the combat methodologies of Ultramarines, Blood Angels, or other potential opponents to create realistic training environments. The chapter's reliance on ancient technology extends beyond weapon systems to include their battlefield augury and communication networks. They maintain and deploy numerous archaic devices that provide capabilities unavailable to standard Imperial forces. Particularly notable are their Auspex arrays, which incorporate scanning technologies dating to the Great Crusade era that can penetrate shielding systems designed to block standard Imperial scanning methods. During the Orphean War, Minotaur's forward elements demonstrated the ability to locate and target Necron forces that remained effectively invisible to other Imperial scanning systems. Their communication systems display similar technological advantages. The chapter utilizes encrypted Vox networks operating on frequencies outside standard Imperial military bands, making their communications virtually impossible to intercept or jam using conventional methods. These systems incorporate machine spirit algorithms that continuously adjust transmission parameters to counter enemy interference attempts, ensuring command cohesion even in environments with heavy electromagnetic disruption. Asterion Moloc stands as one of the most enigmatic and feared chapter masters in the Imperium, a figure shrouded in as much mystery as the chapter he commands. His physical presence alone distinguishes him from typical Astartes commanders, standing nearly a head taller than even the largest Space Marines, with a frame that appears massive even when clad in his ancient Tartaros patterned Terminator armor. The armor itself represents a unique relic, its bronze plates bearing microfine engravings depicting labyrinths and bull iconography dating back possibly to the Great Crusade era. Most distinctive is Moloc's helmet, crafted in the image of a snarling bull with elongated horns that curve forward like massive tusks. The eye lenses glow a deep blood red that many Imperial guardsmen who have fought alongside him describe as baleful or calculating. This helmet has never been seen removed in the presence of anyone outside the chapter's inner circle, fueling speculation about what lies beneath. Some Imperial commanders who have served with Moloc report that he rarely speaks directly, often communicating through his senior officers, or using short, terse statements when direct communication becomes necessary. Moloc's personal weapon, the legendary Black Spear, represents one of the most formidable artifacts in the chapter's arsenal. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, this relic combines elements of a traditional power glaive with integrated graviton pulse generators near its blade. The weapon's haft consists of an unknown black metal that absorbs light rather than reflecting it, while the blade itself bears microscopic etchings in a language that even learned tech priests have failed to identify. In combat, the Black Spear generates a distinctive amber energy field that can cleave through ceramite armor with terrifying efficiency. The weapon's most fearsome aspect lies in its graviton pulse capability. When activated, the blade can release concentrated gravitational waves that crush armor and rupture internal organs without external signs of damage. During the assault on the Lamentor's bark, Moloc was observed using this function to eliminate 3 Terminator armored opponents simultaneously, the graviton pulse simply collapsing their armor inward, with catastrophic results for the warriors inside. Analysis of recovered armor fragments suggested the graviton field had increased local gravity by approximately 300 times standard for a microsecond, sufficient to compress ceramite plate to nearly half its original thickness. Moloc's combat record spans centuries of Imperial campaigns, with confirmed engagements dating back to at least the mid-38th millennium. His tactical approach emphasizes direct personal involvement in critical operations rather than distant command. During the Badab War, he personally led the assault on the Lamentor's geneseed repositories, while in the Orphean War, he directed the counterattack against Necron forces from the front lines rather than a command center. This hands-on leadership style contributes significantly to the chapter's morale while reinforcing Moloc's reputation as the headsman, an executioner who delivers the Emperor's judgment personally. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Moloc's service record lies in the multiple confirmed reports of his apparent death followed by subsequent reappearance. During the Thanatos suppression, reliable Imperial witnesses reported Moloc falling to concentrated heavy weapons fire that reduced his Terminator armor to molten slag. Less than 2 months later, he appeared at an Imperial command briefing showing no signs of injury or recent implantation in new armor. Similarly, during the Battle of Rhokkos, 3 separate Ultramarines officers confirmed Moloc's termination after a direct hit from a traitor Titan's plasma annihilator, yet he reappeared commanding Minotaur's forces during the Indomitus Crusade as if no such incident had occurred. These apparent resurrections have fueled extensive speculation among Imperial authorities about Moloc's true nature. The most mundane theories suggest the chapter maintains multiple warriors who assume the identity of Asterion Moloc, each donning the distinctive armor and black spear when the previous bearer falls. This would explain the physical continuity while accounting for the occasional subtle differences in combat style noted by experienced observers. However, this theory fails to explain how each Moloc demonstrates identical knowledge of previous operations and conversations that no observer could have recorded. More elaborate theories connect these resurrections to the chapter's unusually close relationship with Mars. Some inquisitorial reports suggest the Minotaurs maintain access to advanced biotransference technologies that allow Moloc's consciousness to be implanted into clone bodies when his current form sustains terminal damage. This would explain both his apparent immortality and the subtle physical variations observed between appearances. The technology required for such procedures would far exceed standard Imperial capabilities, implying access to either archaeotech from the Dark Age of technology or possibly Xenos-derived systems maintained in secret. The most controversial theory, whispered only among the highest echelons of the Inquisition, suggests that Moloc may not be a traditional space marine at all, but rather a specialized custodian operative. This theory points to his unusual height, combat prowess exceeding typical Astartes capabilities, and direct line of communication with Terra as evidence of Custod's origin. Proponents note that during the rare instances when Minotaur's forces have operated alongside custodian guards, Moloc has displayed familiarity with their tactical protocols that would be unusual for an Astartes commander. Additionally, his weapon, the Black Spear, bears design similarities to certain Guardian Spear variants used by specialized custodian units. If this custodian theory holds truth, it would explain the chapter's unusual relationship with the High Lords and their specialized anti-Astartes combat doctrine. A chapter led by a disguised custodian would effectively function as an extension of the Emperor's will through his personal guardians, providing Terra with a transhuman enforcement tool that combines custodian leadership with the deployable numbers of a full Space Marine chapter. The political implications of such an arrangement would be profound, essentially creating a hidden talons of the Emperor operating under Astartes' guise. Regardless of his true nature, Moloc's leadership has defined the modern Minotaurs chapter. His combat doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force, tactical precision, and unwavering execution of objectives regardless of cost. Unlike many chapter masters who develop philosophical approaches to warfare based on their Primarch's teachings, Moloc approaches combat with cold pragmatism, treating it as a mathematical equation where victory is simply the application of sufficient force at the correct coordinates. This clinical approach extends to his treatment of chapter casualties. Where many Astartes leaders honor their fallen with elaborate ceremonies and memorials, Moloc views casualties as a resource expenditure necessary for mission completion. The chapter's fallen receive efficient but minimalistic funerary rites focused on geneseed recovery rather than individual commemoration. This utilitarian approach to death reinforces the Minotaurs' reputation as emotionless executioners while raising questions about how they view their own purpose within the Imperium. The chapter's Reclusiam, responsible for maintaining spiritual traditions and combat philosophy, reflects this pragmatic approach to warfare and sacrifice. Unlike the skull-helmeted chaplains of most chapters who focus on inspiring zeal and commemorating chapter heroes, Minotaur's chaplains function more as combat philosophers and efficiency monitors. Their primary role involves analyzing battle performance and reinforcing the chapter's core doctrine of precise violence application, rather than building spiritual fervor. Chaplain Ivanus Nkomi, current Master of Sanctity, exemplifies this distinctive approach. His armor bears none of the elaborate religious iconography typical of chaplains from other chapters, instead featuring only precisely placed campaign markings and kill tallies organized by target classification. His skull helmet has been modified with targeting arrays and enhanced auto-senses rather than the devotional inscriptions favored by his counterparts in other chapters. In combat, he focuses on tactical coordination and efficiency monitoring rather than delivering inspirational oratory. The chapter's spiritual practices center around the concept of the threefold path, a philosophical framework emphasizing precision, momentum, and completion. Precision represents the careful analysis required before combat engagement, ensuring each action serves the ultimate objective. Momentum embodies the chapter's commitment to maintaining constant pressure once engaged, never allowing the enemy to recover or reorganize. Completion signifies the thorough execution of objectives beyond mere victory, ensuring no potential threat remains to challenge Imperial authority in the future. This philosophy manifests in the chapter's unique approach to the Emperor's worship. Where many chapters venerate him as a divine figure or perfect ancestor, the Minotaurs approach the Emperor as the ultimate tactician, a being whose plans operate on timescales and complexities beyond mortal comprehension. Their devotional practices focus not on praise or adoration, but on demonstrating worthiness through perfect execution of assigned tasks. In their view, the highest form of worship is the flawless completion of objectives assigned by Terra. The Reclusiam maintains this philosophical framework through specialized training rather than traditional religious ceremonies. New initiates undergo intensive indoctrination focused on absolute loyalty to the chapter's command structure, and by extension, to Terra itself. Unlike chapters that emphasize individual heroism or personal honor, the Minotaur's training deliberately subordinates individual identity to collective purpose. Battle Brothers are taught to view themselves as components in a weapon system rather than individual warriors, each responsible for executing their assigned function within the greater strategic framework. This approach extends to the chapter's remembrance practices. Rather than maintaining individual hero cults or commemorating fallen warriors by name, the Minotaur's Reclusiam preserves combat records organized by operational classification. The chapter's memorial chambers aboard the Didylos Crata contain data stacks recording centuries of operations, each categorized by mission type, resistance encountered, and efficiency metrics rather than by the individuals who participated. When Battle Brothers study these records, they focus on tactical lessons rather than honoring specific heroes. The most sacred space within the Minotaur's mobile fortress monastery is not a traditional chapel, but the Chamber of Reflection, a massive circular hall dominated by a bronze bull statue standing nearly 15 meters tall. The walls bear inscriptions listing every operation conducted by the chapter since its reformation, with no names of individual warriors, but precise casualty figures and strategic outcomes. Battle Brothers gather here before major deployments, studying relevant historical operations, while chaplains lead them through mental focusing exercises designed to eliminate hesitation and emotional interference. Beneath this chamber lies the chapter's most closely guarded facility, the Forge of Knossos, where their unique wargear is maintained and modified. This space combines elements of a traditional Reclusiam with Mechanicus manufacturing capabilities, reflecting the chapter's integrated approach to spiritual and tactical development. Here, chaplains work alongside tech marines to ensure each weapon and armor component serves both practical combat requirements and reinforces the chapter's philosophical approach to warfare. The relationship between the Reclusiam and Chapter Master Moloc appears unusually formalized compared to other chapters. Where many chapter masters maintain close personal relationships with their masters of sanctity, consulting them on spiritual matters and tactical decisions alike, Moloc interacts with Enkomi through established protocols that more closely resemble military reporting structures than fraternal bonds. This formality reinforces theories regarding Moloc's potential non-Astartes origins, as it maintains a subtle but persistent separation between him and the chapter's traditional spiritual leadership. Perhaps the most distinctive feature of the Minotaur's Reclusiam is its approach to chapter history and lineage. Where most chapters maintain detailed records of their founding and Primarch lineage, considering these connections fundamental to their identity, the Minotaur's chaplains actively discourage such historical inquiry. Initiates who question the chapter's origins or genetic heritage face immediate censure, with repeated inquiries resulting in assignment to penitent combat duties or even mind wipe procedures in extreme cases. This deliberate historical amnesia serves a clear strategic purpose. It prevents the development of fraternal connections with other chapters that might interfere with the Minotaur's specialized role as enforcers against other Astartes. By removing lineage-based brotherhood from their psychological framework, the Reclusiam ensures Minotaur's warriors can engage other Space Marines with the same clinical efficiency they would apply to any other target, unhindered by concepts of shared heritage or transhuman kinship. The Reclusiam's most closely guarded secrets likely concern the true nature of Asterion Moloc and the chapter's direct relationship with Terra. Enkomi and perhaps 2 or 3 senior chaplains appear to have access to information regarding Moloc's resurrections and the chapter's founding purpose. This inner circle maintains these secrets through a combination of compartmentalized information distribution and memory modification techniques applied to Battle Brothers, who encounter sensitive information through combat operations or equipment maintenance. The Macharian heresy stands as one of the most significant demonstrations of the Minotaur's specialized role as enforcers against other Astartes forces. Following the death of Lord Solar Macharius in the year 400 of the 41st millennium, many of his conquests fell into disarray as his generals fought over the spoils of his campaigns. Several Space Marine chapters that had participated in the Crusade became embroiled in these conflicts, some supporting rival claimants to Macharius's legacy, while others attempted to maintain stability in their assigned sectors. The High Lords of Terra, concerned about the potential for widespread rebellion among forces that had operated with significant autonomy during the Crusade, deployed the Minotaurs to the Macharian frontier with specific orders to bring wayward Astartes forces back into compliance. Unlike conventional imperial forces sent to quell rebellious governors and military commanders, the Minotaurs focused almost exclusively on Space Marine chapters that had exceeded their authorized operational parameters or established independent fiefdoms in the power vacuum. The chapter's engagement with the Sons of Horus serves as a particularly stark example of their approach. The Sons, a successor chapter of the Ultramarines despite their name, had established effective control over the Lycanthos sector following the Crusade, ostensibly to maintain imperial stability, but practically functioning as the sector's ruling authority. When imperial tithe collection resumed, the Sons intercepted administratum vessels, redirecting resources to support their own operations rather than returning them to Terra as required. The Minotaur's response was both swift and calculated. 3 strike cruisers translated into the system without warning, establishing orbit around the Sun's primary base of operations on Lycanthos Prime. Chapter Master Asterion Moloc transmitted a single message to the Sun's leadership: compliance or extinction. You have 12 hours. When the Suns refused to relinquish control, citing their duty to protect the sector from the instability plaguing neighboring systems, the Minotaurs executed a precision drop pod assault directly onto the chapter's fortress monastery. The battle lasted 27 hours, with the Minotaurs employing their specialized anti-Astartes tactics with devastating efficiency. Their Terminator formations breached the fortress's central command bunker within the first 3 hours, neutralizing the chapter master and his command staff before they could organize an effective defense. Tactical squads equipped with specialized ammunition designed to penetrate Astartes' armor systematically cleared the remaining defenders, while Tech Marines disabled the fortress's void shields and defensive systems with targeted cyber attacks. By the time Imperial Navy reinforcements arrived to secure the system, the Sons of Horus had effectively ceased to exist as a fighting force. Of their original strength of approximately 800 battle brothers, fewer than 100 survived, most suffering severe injuries. The Minotaurs confiscated the chapter's gene seed stocks, fleet assets, and relic weapons, effectively removing their ability to rebuild. Most significantly, they seized the chapter's records and strategic data, transferring them directly to Terra through secure channels rather than to the local administratum representatives. Similar operations occurred throughout the Macharian frontier, with at least 7 other chapters facing Minotaur's intervention during this period. In each case, the pattern remained consistent: overwhelming force applied with surgical precision, targeting command structures and gene seed repositories to ensure the targeted chapter could not recover. These operations weren't recorded as punitive actions against traitors, but rather as compliance adjustments in official imperial records, creating a bureaucratic fiction that obscured the elimination of entire Astartes chapters. The Euxine incident represents another significant example of the Minotaur's role in suppressing loyalist chapters that had fallen out of favor with Terran authorities. In the 837th year of the 41st millennium, the Doom Warriors chapter, stationed in the Euxine system, refused an administratum directive to surrender 3 agri-worlds under their protection for resource exploitation. The chapter's objection centered on the fact that harvesting these worlds at the demanded rate would cause widespread famine among the local population, violating their sworn oaths to protect imperial citizens in their assigned sector. When diplomatic efforts failed to resolve the impasse, the Minotaurs deployed to the system with a battle group comprising their flagship Didylos Crata, 2 battle barges, and 4 strike cruisers, a force disproportionate to the single company of Doom Warriors present in the system. The Minotaurs established orbit around Euxine Primus, the Doom Warriors' primary base, and initiated what Imperial tactical databases now refer to as a decapitation pattern assault. The first phase involved precision orbital bombardment targeting the fortress monasteries, void shield generators, and communication arrays, executed with remarkable accuracy that left habitation areas and gene seed storage facilities untouched. Once defenses were compromised, Thunderhawk gunships deployed 12 Contemptor dreadnoughts in the initial assault wave, an unprecedented concentration of these ancient war machines that demonstrated both the Minotaurs' access to restricted technology and their commitment to overwhelming force. The Doom Warriors mounted a determined defense, but found themselves outmatched by both the Minotaurs' numerical advantage and their specialized anti-Astartes tactics. The defenders' bolt rounds struggled to penetrate the modified armor of the Minotaurs' Terminators, while return fire from specialized Kraken penetrator bolts and graviton weapons proved devastating against standard Astartes protection. Within 6 hours, the Doom Warriors' command structure had been eliminated, with their chapter master and entire First Company dead or critically wounded. Most telling was the Minotaurs' behavior following their victory. Rather than securing the fortress and establishing an occupation force, they systematically accessed the chapter's data vaults, extracting specific records relating to the Doom Warriors' founding, gene seed purity tests, and communication logs with other chapters. These materials were immediately transferred to a secure data vault aboard the Didilos Crata, with copies transmitted directly to Terra through highly encrypted channels. The precision of this intelligence-gathering operation suggested they had been provided with specific extraction parameters before deployment. The aftermath of the Euxine incident reshaped the sector's power dynamics. The surviving Doom Warriors were absorbed into the Ultramarines and their successors, their chapter effectively dissolved without formal declaration. The contested agri-worlds were placed under direct administratum control, with production quotas increased to the levels originally demanded, despite the predicted humanitarian impact. Most significantly, 3 other chapters operating in neighboring sectors that had expressed similar concerns about administratum policies quietly withdrew their objections within weeks of the incident, demonstrating the effective deterrent of the Minotaurs' intervention. The Orphean War of the year 990, one of the 41st millennium, marked a significant departure from the Minotaurs' typical deployment pattern, placing them against Xenos forces rather than wayward Imperial elements. When the Necron Maynarch dynasty launched a devastating assault on the Orpheus sector, Imperial defenses collapsed with alarming speed. The death of Sector Governor Calibran and the destruction of Battlefleet Orpheus left the region vulnerable to complete Necron conquest, prompting an emergency response from multiple Imperial agencies. The Minotaurs' deployment to this theater came at the direct request of the High Lords rather than through standard Imperial military channels. Their fleet arrived in the sector approximately 2 weeks after the initial Necron assault, bypassing the forming Imperial battle group to strike directly at Necron forces on Amara Prime, the sector's former capital now under Xenos control. Their approach to engaging the Necrons demonstrated tactical flexibility not typically associated with the chapter. Rather than employing their standard shock assault doctrine, which would have proven ineffective against the Necrons' phase technology and reanimation protocols, the Minotaurs implemented what surviving Imperial commanders described as a calculated attrition pattern. This approach involved carefully measured engagements designed to draw out and eliminate Necron command units while avoiding unnecessary casualties against basic warrior constructs. Particularly notable was their effective use of specialized anti-Necron weaponry that most Imperial forces lacked. The Minotaurs deployed graviton imploders, Volkite carronade arrays, and conversion beamers, all ancient technologies rarely seen in 41st millennium battlefields. These weapons proved remarkably effective against Necron forces, suggesting the chapter maintained detailed tactical data on Necron vulnerabilities despite the relative rarity of such encounters in Imperial history. The Minotaurs' most significant contribution to the Orphean War came during the Battle of Amara Prime, where they deployed alongside elements of the Death Spectre's chapter and Imperial Guard regiments from Nemedian Prime. While other Imperial forces engaged the main Necron army, the Minotaurs executed a precision deep strike operation targeting the primary command node identified by their specialized augur arrays. Terminator squads teleported directly into the Necron command structure, deploying specialized disruption devices that severed the command protocols, controlling warrior constructs across 3 districts of the former capital. This operation demonstrated a level of technical understanding regarding Necron command structures that surprised even Ordo Xenos observers present in the war zone. The disruption devices employed technology that interacted directly with Necron command protocols, temporarily preventing reanimation within a 3-kilometer radius. Analysis of these devices after the conflict revealed components of apparent Necron origin, modified with Imperial technology, raising questions about how the Minotaurs had acquired such materials and the knowledge to repurpose them. Despite these tactical successes, the overall Imperial position in the Orphean War remained untenable. As Necron forces continued to advance across the sector, the Minotaurs executed a fighting withdrawal, securing key archaeological sites and data repositories before extraction. Their fleet departed the sector carrying substantial cargo containers bearing Adeptus Mechanicus seals, their contents classified beyond the access of even senior inquisitorial representatives present in the theater. The chapter's final action in the conflict involved the precision bombardment of 3 specific coordinates on Amara Prime, targeting locations with no apparent tactical significance, but which subsequent analysis suggested contained buried structures of unknown origin. The Indomitus Crusade marked the Minotaurs' entry into the conflicts of the era Indomitus, though their participation differed significantly from most chapters. When Roboute Guilliman launched his campaign to rescue the imperiled worlds of the Imperium following the creation of the Great Rift, the Minotaurs were notably absent from the initial muster of forces. They only joined the Crusade in its 2nd year, arriving with a fleet showing significant battle damage from unrecorded prior engagements. Their late arrival prompted speculation among other Imperial commanders. Some suggested they had been engaged in classified operations elsewhere, while others theorized they had deliberately delayed to assess the political implications of Guilliman's return before committing their forces. The chapter's command remained characteristically silent on the matter, providing no explanation for their delayed response to what many considered the most significant Imperial campaign in millennia. When they did join the Crusade, the Minotaurs operated with unusual independence even by their standards. Rather than integrating into the Crusade's command structure, they conducted parallel operations in systems adjacent to primary Crusade targets, often arriving just as main Crusade forces departed for their next objective. This pattern suggested a secondary agenda beyond the Crusade's stated goals of reclaiming lost territory and reinforcing beleaguered Imperial worlds. The chapter's approach to Primaris Space Marines further distinguished them from other Crusade participants. While most chapters eagerly incorporated these enhanced warriors into their ranks, the Minotaurs initially segregated their Primaris contingent, deploying them as separate units under the direct command of firstborn officers. This cautious integration suggested either doctrinal concerns about the new warriors' capabilities, or, more likely, political reservations about warriors created under Guilliman's authority rather than directly sanctioned by the High Lords. Particularly telling was the Minotaurs' behavior during joint operations with Guilliman's own Ultramarines. Imperial observers noted a palpable tension between the 2 chapters, with the Minotaurs maintaining rigid formal protocols that bordered on insubordination when receiving orders from Ultramarines commanders, including those directly representing the Primarch. This subtle resistance never crossed into outright defiance, but clearly demonstrated the chapter's discomfort with the shifted power dynamics following Guilliman's return. The most significant Minotaurs operation during the Indomitus Crusade occurred in the Donler system, where they engaged a substantial Alpha Legion force that had established control over 3 habitable worlds. Rather than coordinating with nearby Crusade elements, the Minotaurs conducted an independent campaign that systematically eliminated the traitor presence through their characteristic combination of overwhelming force and precision targeting. What distinguished this operation from standard counter-chaos actions was the Minotaurs' focus on capturing rather than killing Alpha Legion commanders. They deployed specialized containment units with stasis field generators, securing at least 7 high-ranking traitors for transfer directly to vessels bearing inquisitorial markings that rendezvoused with their fleet immediately following the campaign. This prisoner extraction operation occurred without the knowledge of other Crusade forces operating in neighboring systems, suggesting a predetermined intelligence gathering agenda separate from the Crusade's primary objectives. As the Indomitus Crusade progressed into its later stages, the Minotaurs gradually withdrew their forces, citing the need to address priority threat containment in unspecified sectors. By the time Guilliman declared the Crusade complete, the chapter had redeployed entirely to operations along the borders of the Segmentum Solar, focusing particularly on systems with strategic importance to Terra's defensive perimeter. This redeployment coincided with increasing political tensions between Guilliman and elements of the High Lord's Chamber, suggesting the Minotaurs were being positioned to protect Terra's interests should these tensions escalate further. The conflicts of the era Indomitus have seen the Minotaurs engaged in operations that increasingly reflect the fractured nature of imperial authority in the wake of the Great Rift. Their deployments show a clear pattern of prioritizing threats to Terra and the Segmentum Solar, even at the expense of strategically significant objectives elsewhere. This focus on the Imperium's core, rather than its embattled frontiers, aligns with their traditional role as the High Lord's enforcers, suggesting their primary purpose remains protecting the political center of the Imperium rather than its territorial integrity. The Minotaurs chapter's organizational structure represents one of the most intriguing paradoxes within the Adeptus Astartes. On the surface, they present the appearance of codex compliance, with their battle companies and command hierarchy broadly following the structural guidelines laid down by Robute Guilliman. Yet beneath this veneer of conformity lies a complex web of deviations that optimize the chapter for their specialized role as the High Lord's executioners. The chapter maintains the standard 10 companies prescribed by the Codex Astartes, with companies numbered 1st through 10th. Each nominally adheres to the prescribed strength of 100 battle brothers, though actual deployment numbers frequently show variances based on operational requirements. The first company, as in Codex-compliant chapters, consists of veteran warriors with access to the chapter's limited supplies of Terminator armor. Companies 2 through 5 function as battle companies with mixed tactical, assault, and devastator squads, while 6 and 7 serve as tactical companies, 8 as the assault company, 9 as the devastator company, and 10th as the scout company. This superficial compliance, however, masks significant structural adaptations. Most notable is the chapter's distribution of Terminator armor, which deviates dramatically from Codex norms. Where a typical chapter maintains approximately 100 suits of Terminator armor, reserved exclusively for First Company veterans, the Minotaurs possess an estimated 180-200 suits distributed throughout their command structure. These include approximately 60 suits of the ancient Tartaros pattern, 30 of the even rarer Cataphracti design, and the remainder consisting of standard Indomitus pattern. This concentration of Terminator armor exceeds even that of some first founding chapters, suggesting either preferential supply allocation or the acquisition of these assets from other chapters during compliance actions. The distribution of this Terminator armor throughout the chapter creates unique tactical capabilities. Rather than concentrating these assets in the first company, the Minotaurs maintain Terminator-equipped squads in each battle company, enabling them to deploy these elite units across multiple theaters simultaneously. During the Badab War, for instance, the chapter was able to field Terminator squads in 3 separate engagement zones without depleting their first company reserves. This distribution pattern optimizes the chapter for their preferred zone Mortalis operations, where Terminator armor provides critical advantages in confined environments. The Minotaur's approach to Dreadnought deployment shows similar deviations from Codex standards. The chapter maintains approximately 27 active Dreadnoughts, nearly triple the number typically fielded by Codex-compliant forces. This unusually high number includes at least 12 of the ancient Contemptor pattern, 3 of the even rarer Derideo heavy support variant, and a single Leviathan siege dreadnought. The remaining units consist of standard Castroferum pattern dreadnoughts, though many feature extensive modifications not seen in other chapters. Like their Terminator suits, these dreadnoughts are distributed throughout the chapter's companies rather than centralized as a strategic reserve. Each battle company maintains at least 2 dreadnoughts as organic assets, with additional units assigned based on operational requirements. This distribution enables the Minotaurs to deploy these powerful combat platforms as frontline assault elements rather than rare strategic assets, reinforcing their doctrine of overwhelming initial force application. The chapter's vehicle pool similarly exceeds standard codex allocations, particularly in specialized assault vehicles. Their armored strength includes approximately 35 Predator tanks, 15 Vindicator siege tanks, 8 Sicaran battle tanks of various patterns, and 4 Land Raider variants not widely used in the 41st millennium, including 2 Proteus pattern vehicles dating to the Great Crusade era. This vehicle concentration, combined with their extensive dreadnought forces, provides the chapter with exceptional armored assault capabilities despite their fleet-based nature. Perhaps most telling is the Minotaur's maintenance of specialized units not recognized in the Codex Astartes. The Eumenides squads represent one such formation, specialized hunter-killer teams comprising 5 battle brothers equipped with enhanced sensor arrays and specialized ammunition designed specifically for eliminating other Astartes. These units operate under direct chapter command rather than company assignment, deploying as needed to target high-value enemy assets, particularly command elements of other Space Marine forces. Similarly, the chapter maintains Theseus cadres, 20-man formations drawn from multiple companies and equipped for specific operational environments. Unlike standard detachments created temporarily for specific missions, these cadres function as permanent units with established command structures and extensive experience operating as cohesive forces. The Minus cadre specializes in void warfare, the Gnosis cadre in urban combat, and the Daedalus cadre in siege operations. This specialized structure enables rapid deployment of forces optimized for specific engagement types without requiring ad hoc organization during deployment. The command structure governing these forces deviates from Codex standards in several significant ways, while maintaining the traditional roles of chapter master, company captains, chaplains, librarians, and apothecaries. The Minotaurs incorporate additional command positions that reflect their unique operational requirements. The Shipmaster Primus oversees the chapter's extensive fleet assets with authority equal to a senior captain, controlling deployment schedules and void combat operations. The Strategic and Imperiales serves as the chapter's primary liaison with other Imperial forces, managing the complex interface between Minotaur's operations and broader Imperial campaigns. Most unusual is the position of Covenant Militant, a role combining elements of chaplain and commissar functions. These officers, typically numbering 5 to 7 throughout the chapter, monitor battle brothers for signs of excessive independence or questioning of orders. Unlike traditional chaplains who focus on spiritual guidance and combat motivation, the Covenant's militants specifically enforce adherence to command directives and Terra's authority. Their presence during operations serves as a constant reminder of the chapter's ultimate loyalty to the High Lords rather than to Astartes' traditions or even their own chapter master. The Minotaur's fleet organization represents another significant deviation from typical Astartes structures, where most chapters maintain a handful of capital ships supported by strike cruisers and escort vessels. The Minotaurs operate a fleet comparable to a small battle fleet segment. At its core stands the Didylos Crata, a vessel of uncertain classification that serves as the chapter's mobile fortress monastery. Supporting this massive flagship are 4 battle barges, 12 strike cruisers, and approximately 20 escort vessels of various classes. This fleet composition enables the chapter to project force across multiple systems simultaneously while maintaining substantial orbital support for ground operations. The most distinctive aspect of this fleet is its specialization in void warfare. Unlike many chapter fleets that serve primarily as transport and orbital support platforms, Minotaur's vessels are optimized for ship-to-ship combat. Their strike cruisers feature reinforced prow sections for ramming actions, enhanced boarding torpedo launchers, and specialized auger arrays calibrated for tracking other Astartes vessels. The battle barge Fidelitas Lambda notably includes a Nova cannon of a pattern typically reserved for Imperial Navy battleships, providing exceptional long-range engagement capabilities unusual for Astartes vessels. This fleet specialization directly supports the chapter's expertise in boarding actions and void warfare. During the Badab War, Minotaur's vessels demonstrated the ability to close with and disable secessionist ships with remarkable efficiency, creating opportunities for their specialized boarding teams to neutralize enemy vessels with minimal damage to critical systems. This capability proves particularly valuable when targeting other Astartes fleets, as it enables the seizure of valuable assets rather than their destruction. The Minotaur's approach to Primaris integration since the dawn of the Indomitus era further demonstrates their unique organizational philosophy. Unlike many chapters that either embraced these new warriors enthusiastically or rejected them outright, the Minotaurs implemented a carefully measured integration program that preserved their specialized capabilities while incorporating the enhanced combat potential of Primaris Marines. Rather than reorganizing existing companies to accommodate Primaris squads, the chapter created specialized Primaris formations within each company, operating alongside traditional firstborn units but maintaining separate command structures. These formations, designated Talos Cadres, function as self-contained combat units comprising intercessors, hellblasters, and aggressors in proportions optimized for the company's operational focus. This approach preserves the chapter's established tactical doctrines while gradually incorporating Primaris capabilities into their overall strategy. Most telling is the chapter's approach to Gravis armor deployment. Rather than following the standard Primaris organizational doctrine, the Minotaurs concentrate their heavy intercessors and aggressors into specialized assault formations that functionally replace Terminator squads in certain operations. These units receive extensive training in Zone Mortalis environments, essentially adapting Primaris capabilities to the chapter's traditional operational specialties. During the Nemengast Uprising, Minotaur's Gravis armored units demonstrated boarding action proficiency comparable to their Terminator-equipped counterparts, suggesting successful adaptation of their combat doctrine to incorporate these new assets. The Minotaur's armory organization similarly reflects their specialized combat focus. Unlike the centralized armory structure prescribed by the Codex, the chapter maintains distributed weapons repositories throughout their fleet, with each major vessel housing sufficient arms and equipment to supply its embarked forces independently. This distribution ensures operational continuity even when fleet elements become separated during extended campaigns or warp translation. The chapter's Techmarines operate with unusual independence compared to their counterparts in other chapters. Where most Techmarines serve primarily as equipment maintenance specialists and vehicle operators, Minotaur's Techmarines actively participate in combat operations, particularly those involving boarding actions or technical objective seizure. During the Euxine incident, Techmarine squads led the assault on the Doom Warriors' data vaults, securing critical information while simultaneously disabling defensive systems to facilitate the main assault forces' advance. This technical expertise extends to the chapter's approach to battlefield augury and communication. The Minotaurs maintain specialized signal intelligence teams, designated Theseus Eyes, who focus on intercepting and decrypting enemy communications, particularly those of other Astartes forces. These teams operate sophisticated auger arrays calibrated specifically to penetrate space marine encryption protocols, providing critical intelligence advantages during operations against other chapters. During the Badab War, these capabilities enabled the Minotaurs to anticipate Lamentor's fleet movements with remarkable accuracy, creating tactical advantages that proved decisive in several key engagements. The chapter's Apothecary Corps demonstrates similar specialization beyond Codex parameters. In addition to their traditional roles in geneseed recovery and battlefield medical support, Minotaur's apothecaries maintain extensive biological research facilities aboard the Didylos Crata. These laboratories focus on analyzing gene seed samples collected during operations against other chapters, cataloging variations and potential degradations with a thoroughness that exceeds standard apothecarian practices. This research focus suggests the chapter maintains a specialized interest in Astartes genetics beyond mere operational necessity. Particularly notable is the chapter's maintenance of a specialized formation known as the Gorgon Conclave, a cadre of senior apothecaries who focus exclusively on examining and cataloging gene seed samples collected from other chapters. This unit maintains dedicated laboratory facilities aboard the Didylos Crata, equipped with analysis technologies rarely seen outside Mechanicus biological research stations. The purpose of this extensive gene seed cataloging remains unclear, though it aligns with the chapter's broader pattern of collecting intelligence on potential future adversaries. The Minotaur's approach to recruitment further distinguishes them from Codex-compliant chapters. Rather than drawing aspirants from a specific homeworld or region, they appear to receive candidates from multiple sources throughout the Imperium. Analysis of chapter personnel during joint operations reveals diverse physical characteristics suggesting varied origin worlds, with no apparent preference for specific genetic or cultural backgrounds. This diversity supports theories that the chapter receives pre-screened candidates through direct Terran channels rather than conducting their own recruitment. The training regimen these recruits undergo emphasizes absolute loyalty to the chapter hierarchy, and by extension, to Terra itself. Where many chapters balance indoctrination with some degree of tactical initiative, the Minotaur's program focuses on creating warriors who execute orders with precision regardless of personal cost. This approach produces battle brothers who function with machine-like efficiency in implementing tactical directives, but may lack the adaptive creativity valued by other chapters. Human serfs within the chapter's organization occupy a position notably different from those in many other chapters. Where chapters like the Ultramarines or Blood Angels treat their human auxiliaries with respect bordering on familial inclusion, the Minotaurs maintain a strictly utilitarian relationship with their non-Astartes personnel. These individuals serve specific technical, administrative, or logistical functions without the ceremonial or traditional roles seen in other chapters. No evidence exists of the hereditary serf lineages common in many chapters, suggesting the Minotaurs regularly rotate their human support personnel rather than maintaining multi-generational service traditions. This utilitarian approach extends to the chapter's interface with other imperial organizations. Where many chapters maintain traditional relationships with specific Imperial Guard regiments, Mechanicus forges, or Navigator houses, the Minotaurs operate with remarkable independence from such connections. Their interactions with other Imperial forces occur through formalized protocols rather than established relationships, creating an operational flexibility that allows them to deploy anywhere in the Imperium without relying on specific support structures. The chapter's Librarius similarly demonstrates specialized organization beyond Codex parameters. Minotaur's librarians focus extensively on divination and telepathic disciplines, with particular emphasis on techniques designed to penetrate mental shielding and extract information from unwilling subjects. During the Badab War, librarians attached to boarding teams demonstrated the ability to locate hidden Lamentor's personnel through walls and sealed compartments, suggesting specialized training in detecting other Astartes through their unique mental signatures. The Minotaur's interactions with other Imperial institutions are defined by a complex web of antagonism, privilege, and calculated distance that sets them apart from nearly all other Astartes chapters. Where most Space Marine forces cultivate relationships based on mutual respect and shared purpose, the Minotaurs operate with a cold pragmatism that treats other Imperial organizations as either assets to be utilized or obstacles to be overcome, depending on their alignment with Terran authority. Among their fellow Space Marines, the Minotaurs have earned a reputation for brutality and arrogance that borders on outright hostility. This antagonism manifests most visibly in joint operations, where the chapter routinely ignores established coordination protocols, commandeers strategic assets without consultation, and dismisses tactical input from other Astartes commanders. During the Orphean War, the Minotaurs seized control of orbital fire support platforms originally assigned to the Death Spectres, redirecting their bombardment patterns without warning and nearly causing friendly fire incidents that would have decimated Death Spectre's ground forces. When confronted about this dangerous breach of protocol, Asterion Moloc simply stated that assets will be deployed where they prove most efficient before terminating communications. This dismissive attitude extends beyond mere operational friction to include the deliberate humiliation of other chapters. Following their intervention in the Euxine incident, the Minotaurs displayed captured Doom Warriors banners and weapons aboard their vessels, positioning these trophies prominently when receiving delegations from other chapters. During fleet maneuvers near Bacca, they transmitted battle recordings of their victory over the Lamenters on open Vox channels when passing ultramarine vessels, a calculated insult to the Sons of Guilliman who had advocated for more lenient treatment of the defeated chapter. The Minotaurs' antagonism appears particularly pronounced toward first founding chapters and their direct successors. Joint operations with the Imperial Fists during the Nimbosa campaign were marked by continuous jurisdictional disputes, with Minotaurs' officers routinely challenging Imperial Fists' battle plans and inserting their forces into operations without prior coordination. When Chapter Master Vornhagen attempted to establish clear command protocols, Asterion Moloc responded by deploying his forces to a different war zone entirely, effectively abandoning the campaign rather than accepting even nominal oversight from the Sons of Dorn. Relations with the Ultramarines and their successors have deteriorated to the point where many Ultramarine-derived chapters refuse joint deployments with the Minotaurs entirely. This animosity intensified following the resurrection of Robute Guilliman, as the Minotaurs demonstrated subtle but unmistakable resistance to the Primarch's authority. During the Indomitus Crusade, they repeatedly delayed implementing strategic directives from Guilliman's command staff, citing tactical reassessment requirements or equipment recalibration protocols that conveniently postponed their compliance until circumstances had changed sufficiently to justify alternative approaches. The Space Wolves maintain perhaps the most openly hostile stance toward the Minotaurs, following a confrontation in the Havar system that nearly escalated to direct conflict. When both chapters responded to distress calls from the system's Forge world, the Space Wolves established defensive positions around civilian evacuation zones, while the Minotaurs focused on securing Archaeotech vaults. As Chaos forces pressed their attack against the civilian zones, the Minotaurs refused requests for reinforcement, maintaining their position around the vaults. Logan Grimnar himself reportedly voxed Asterion Moloc, warning that the Sons of Rus do not forget those who value cold metal above living souls. Since this incident, the two chapters have maintained an unspoken policy of operational separation, with fleet elements altering course to avoid direct encounters. Even chapters with reputations for brutality themselves find the Minotaurs' methods excessive. The Marines Malevolent, noted for their own disregard for civilian casualties, expressed concern after observing Minotaurs' suppression tactics on Helios Prime. Captain Vanyar of the Marines Malevolent reportedly commented that there is a difference between necessary harshness and methodical extermination, following the Minotaurs' systematic elimination of an entire hive level to suppress a rebellion that might have been contained through more targeted operations. This widespread antagonism has effectively isolated the Minotaurs within the broader Adeptus Astartes community. They receive few requests for support from other chapters, are rarely invited to attend concaves or councils of war, and find themselves excluded from the information-sharing networks that many chapters maintain through informal channels. This isolation appears deliberate rather than incidental to their purpose. A chapter designed to enforce compliance among other Astartes cannot afford the brotherhood bonds that might stay their hand when orders demand action against fellow Space Marines. In stark contrast to this antagonistic relationship with their fellow Astartes, the Minotaurs enjoy unprecedented cooperation with the Adeptus Mechanicus, where most chapters must navigate complex treaties and exchange protocols to secure technical support beyond basic maintenance agreements. The Minotaurs receive direct assistance from Mechanicus forged ships that periodically rendezvous with their fleet in deep space, far from established Imperial routes. These encounters, documented by long-range naval auger arrays, typically last several weeks and involve substantial material transfers from Mechanicus vessels to Minotaurs ships. The technical sophistication evident in the Minotaurs' arsenal provides tangible proof of this privileged relationship. Their inventory includes patterns of Volkite weapons that even first founding chapters struggle to maintain in limited numbers. During the Orphean War, they deployed modified conversion beamers incorporating stabilization technologies supposedly lost since the Horus Heresy. Their Contemptor dreadnoughts utilize power distribution systems that improve operational duration by approximately 35% compared to standard patterns maintained by other chapters, suggesting access to technical expertise beyond that available through normal Mechanicus support channels. This technological privilege extends to their fleet assets. The battle barge Didilo's Hammer incorporates void shield harmonization systems that allow for significantly faster recharge rates than comparable vessels in other chapter fleets. Their strike cruisers utilize enhanced warp engines that reduce translation times by approximately 15% compared to standard configurations, providing strategic mobility advantages in extended campaigns. Most tellingly, analysis of their flagship Didilo's Crata suggests the vessel incorporates technologies from multiple eras, including components dating to the Great Crusade, seamlessly integrated with more modern systems in ways that would require exceptional technical expertise and access to restricted template databases. The Forge world Lucius maintains particularly close ties with the chapter, providing specialized munitions and equipment modifications not available to other Astartes forces. During the Badab War, the Minotaurs deployed Lucius-patterned siege dreadnoughts with enhanced targeting systems specifically calibrated for penetrating Astartes armor at optimal efficiency. Similarly, their bolter ammunition included specialized variants of Kraken penetrator rounds modified with disruption cores designed to defeat ceramite plate, modifications that Lucius typically reserves for Mechanicus Skitarii forces rather than Astartes allies. This preferential treatment extends to repair and refit priorities in Mechanicus facilities. Following the Orphean War, the Minotaurs' fleet received immediate attention at the Bacchus shipyards, bypassing vessels from 3 other chapters that had been waiting for repairs for several months. Magos Dominus Hieronymus Tesla personally supervised the refit of the strike cruiser Lord of Wrath, applying enhancements to its lance batteries that incorporated technologies typically reserved for Mechanicus vessels. When questioned about this preferential treatment by representatives from the waiting chapters, the Magos simply cited priority directives from Mars without further explanation. The source of this privileged relationship appears to lie in direct mandate from the highest levels of Mars itself. Fragmentary communications intercepted by inquisitorial assets suggest the Fabricator General maintains personal interest in the chapter's operations, particularly those involving recovery of archaeotech or engagement with other Astartes forces. This unusual attention from Mars' supreme authority implies the Minotaurs serve purposes valuable to the Mechanicus leadership, perhaps as enforcers against tech heresy among other chapters, or as recovery specialists for technology deemed too sensitive for conventional explorator teams. The Minotaurs' relationship with Imperial Guard forces presents yet another facet of their complex position within the Imperium's military structure. Unlike chapters that develop traditional bonds with specific regiments or maintain consistent coordination protocols with Guard commands, the Minotaurs interact with mortal forces through a rigid framework that emphasizes clear hierarchical separation. They neither request support from Guard units nor offer assistance beyond their specifically assigned objectives, treating mortal forces as entirely separate operational entities rather than complementary assets. This operational separation often creates friction in joint deployments. During the Damocles Gulf campaign, the Minotaurs secured their assigned objectives with characteristic efficiency, but made no effort to coordinate their advances with nearby guard formations, creating dangerous gaps in the Imperial line that Tiao forces quickly exploited. When Lord General Wendish requested tactical coordination to address these vulnerabilities, the Minotaurs' command simply responded that assigned objectives have been secured and redirected their forces to a different sector without further discussion. Guard commanders who have operated alongside the Minotaurs frequently report a sense of being evaluated rather than supported. Colonel Matthias Vorens of the Cadian 212th noted that Minotaurs observers monitored his regiment's performance during the Nemengast campaign, recording combat effectiveness metrics and casualty response patterns without offering tactical input or combat assistance. This behavior suggests the chapter views Imperial Guard operations as data-gathering opportunities rather than collaborative efforts, collecting information on mortal combat effectiveness for unknown purposes. Despite this operational distance, the Minotaurs demonstrate remarkable responsiveness to requests from Lord Militant rank officers and above. When Lord Militant Gorman requested Astartes support during the scourging of Karak, the Minotaurs responded within 6 days, approximately 3 times faster than the average response time for non-committed Astartes forces. This selective responsiveness further supports the theory that the chapter operates under direct authority from the highest levels of Imperial command, bypassing standard military coordination structures to implement directives from Terra itself. The chapter's relationship with the Inquisition reveals perhaps the most unusual aspect of their position within the Imperial hierarchy. Where most chapters maintain careful distance from inquisitorial authority, preserving their autonomy through tradition and political maneuvering, the Minotaurs demonstrate an unusual willingness to accommodate inquisitorial requests while simultaneously maintaining operational independence that even inquisitors hesitate to challenge. This complex dynamic manifests most clearly in intelligence-sharing protocols. The Minotaurs routinely provide detailed, after-action reports to Ordo Hereticus representatives following operations against other Astartes forces, including gene seed analysis, command structure assessments, and combat effectiveness metrics. During the Badab War, they granted Inquisitor Legate Frayne unprecedented access to captured Lamentor's gene seed samples and chapter records, facilitating detailed analysis of the genetic degradation affecting the Lamentor's gene line. Yet this apparent cooperation exists alongside clear operational boundaries that even senior Inquisitors appear reluctant to challenge. When Inquisitor Lord Hextus attempted to direct Minotaur's assets during the Purge of Sacristan IV, Asterion Moloc simply ignored the Inquisitor's tactical directives, proceeding with his predetermined assault plan without acknowledgement or explanation. Rather than asserting his theoretical authority over the Astartes forces, Hextus redirected his own assets to accommodate the Minotaur's operation, a remarkable inversion of the typical power dynamic between Inquisitors and Space Marine chapters. This unusual relationship suggests the Minotaurs operate under protection that supersedes even inquisitorial authority in certain contexts. Their willingness to share intelligence while maintaining absolute operational autonomy indicates they serve masters whose authority the Inquisition itself recognizes and respects, most likely the High Lords of Terra directly. This arrangement effectively positions the chapter as a parallel enforcement arm operating alongside but separate from inquisitorial authority, with each recognizing the other's specific jurisdiction. Among Imperial citizens and planetary governors, the Minotaurs have cultivated a reputation of calculated dread. Unlike chapters that develop public personas as defenders or protectors, the Minotaurs make no effort to engender positive relations with civilian populations. They issue no propaganda, establish no recruitment centers, and maintain no public shrines or monuments. Their interactions with civilian authorities remain strictly limited to operational necessities, creating an impression of detached lethality that serves their enforcement role more effectively than any active intimidation campaign could achieve. This detachment creates a distinctive psychological impact when the chapter does appear. The sudden arrival of their bronze-armored warriors in a system has become recognized throughout the Imperium as a sign of imminent and overwhelming force application. During the Lycanthos Drift campaign, 3 planetary governors who had been withholding tithe payments immediately resumed full compliance when a single Minotaur strike cruiser translated into the system. No direct threats were necessary, as the chapter's mere presence communicated the seriousness with which Terra viewed the situation. Planetary defense forces that have witnessed Minotaur's operations firsthand typically develop strict protocols for immediate compliance with any directives issued by the chapter. Following the suppression of the Argentum Rebellion, PDF commanders across 3 neighboring sectors implemented mandatory response drills specifically for Minotaur's arrival scenarios, emphasizing immediate stand-down procedures and unrestricted access to all military facilities. This institutionalized deference reflects the chapter's success in establishing themselves as enforcers beyond question or resistance. The Administratum maintains perhaps the most pragmatic relationship with the Minotaurs, viewing them as valuable assets for ensuring compliance with imperial authority while maintaining careful administrative distance. Tithe collection rates in sectors where the Minotaurs have conducted recent operations typically show increases of 15–30% for approximately 3 years following their appearance, as planetary governors prioritize imperial obligations to avoid attracting renewed attention. Administratum analysts have documented this compliance effect in multiple reports, quantifying the economic value of the chapter's reputation as a compliance enforcement tool. The arrival of Belisarius Cahl's Primaris Space Marines presented an unprecedented challenge to the established order of the Adeptus Astartes, and the Minotaur's response proved characteristically calculated and cautious. Unlike many chapters who either embraced or rejected these new warriors outright, the Minotaurs implemented a measured integration strategy that preserved their specialized combat doctrine while carefully evaluating the strategic implications of this new technology. When the first Primaris reinforcements arrived at the Minotaur's fleet in 42nd millennium, they were not immediately incorporated into existing companies. Instead, Asterion Moloc established a separate training cadre designated the Theseus Contingent, where these new warriors underwent extensive indoctrination and combat assessment before receiving any battlefield deployments. This quarantine period lasted approximately 16 months, significantly longer than most chapters required, during which the Minotaurs subjected their Primaris brethren to rigorous testing, focused particularly on loyalty conditioning and adherence to command protocols. The chapter's apothecaries and tech marines conducted exhaustive analysis of the Primaris Marines' enhanced physiology and equipment, paying particular attention to the potential strategic implications of their extended hypno-indoctrination under Cahl's supervision. Samples were taken from each warrior's enhanced organs, with particular focus on the Magnificat and Belisarian furnace implants. These samples underwent extensive comparison with the chapter's existing gene seed, seeking any evidence of deviation from their established genetic baseline or signs of external influence in their conditioning protocols. Only after this thorough evaluation did the Minotaurs begin integrating Primaris Marines into their combat operations, and even then with significant modifications to standard Primaris deployment patterns. Rather than organizing them into distinct intercessor, aggressor, or inceptor squads as prescribed by Guilliman's updated codex, the chapter created mixed composition units that combined various Primaris types with traditional Firstborn Marines. These composite squads operated under veteran Firstborn sergeants, ensuring the new warriors absorbed the chapter's unique combat doctrine through direct battlefield mentorship. The Minotaurs' approach to Primaris equipment proved equally methodical. Their artificers extensively modified the standard Mark X armor variants, incorporating bronzed plating and bull iconography to match their established aesthetic while adding specialized components optimized for Zone Mortalis operations. Particularly notable were their modifications to Gravis armor, which received reinforced frontal plating, and enhanced auto senses calibrated specifically for confined space operations. These modifications slightly reduced mobility, but significantly increased survivability in the chapter's preferred engagement environments. By early 42nd millennium, the Minotaurs had fully incorporated Primaris technology throughout their ranks, though in a configuration distinctly different from Guilliman's vision. Rather than maintaining separate Primaris companies or squads, they distributed these enhanced warriors throughout their existing structure, creating mixed units that leveraged both traditional and Primaris capabilities. This integration pattern preserved their established command hierarchy while incorporating the enhanced combat potential of the new Astartes, effectively creating a hybrid force that maintained the chapter's distinctive identity and specialized capabilities. The Minotaur's strategic position, following the formation of the Great Rift and Guilliman's return as Lord Commander, demonstrated their remarkable adaptability to the shifting political landscape of the Imperium. Where many chapters struggled to navigate the competing authorities of the returned Primarch and the established High Lords, the Minotaurs executed a carefully balanced approach that maintained their traditional loyalties while acknowledging new realities. Their initial response to Guilliman's assumption of command appeared deliberately measured. When the Primarch issued his call for all available chapters to join the Indomitus Crusade, the Minotaurs responded with a commitment of forces that, while technically compliant, represented only approximately 30% of their total strength. The remainder continued operations in the Segmentum Solar and surrounding regions, focusing particularly on securing supply lines and communication hubs critical to Terra's defense network. This divided deployment pattern reflected the chapter's position at the intersection of competing imperial authorities. By contributing forces to Guilliman's crusade, they acknowledged the Primarch's legitimate authority as Lord Commander, while simultaneously maintaining their traditional role as the High Lord's enforcement arm within the Imperium's core regions. This balanced approach preserved their specialized strategic position while adapting to the new command reality established by Guilliman's return. The chapter's operations during this period revealed a subtle but significant shift in targeting priorities. Where their pre-Rift deployments frequently focused on enforcing compliance among potentially wayward Astartes chapters, their post-Rift operations demonstrated increased focus on chaos incursions and warp-related threats. During the Indratus campaign, they deployed 6 full companies against Black Legion forces attempting to establish a foothold in the Segmentum Solar, demonstrating unprecedented commitment to anti-chaos operations. This shift likely reflected both practical necessity, as chaos threats increased dramatically following the Rift's formation, and political calculation, as direct action against loyal chapters became more problematic under Guilliman's leadership. By redirecting their specialized anti-Astartes combat expertise against traitor forces, the Minotaurs maintained their operational focus while aligning with the Primarch's strategic priorities. This adaptation demonstrated the chapter's pragmatic approach to imperial politics, adjusting their operations to accommodate new realities while preserving their core purpose and capabilities. The Minotaur's relationship with Guilliman himself remained carefully formal. During the rare instances when Asterion Moloc directly interacted with the returned Primarch, observers noted a tension that never quite crossed into insubordination, but clearly communicated the chapter's uncertain position in the new power dynamic. Moloc addressed Guilliman with precise honorifics and technical compliance, while subtly emphasizing his chapter's direct mandate from the full authority of Terra, a careful linguistic distinction that acknowledged the Primarch's position while implying continued loyalty to the broader imperial structure rather than to Guilliman personally. This ambiguous positioning proved advantageous as tensions occasionally emerged between Guilliman and elements of the High Lord's chamber. When the Primarch implemented his sweeping administrative reforms, the Minotaurs maintained a careful distance from the political maneuvering that followed, neither openly supporting nor opposing the changes. This neutrality preserved their operational autonomy while avoiding entanglement in the complex power adjustments occurring within Terra's highest authority structures. The chapter's engagement with Chaos forces following the Great Rift's formation revealed both their exceptional combat effectiveness and potential vulnerabilities inherent in their specialized anti-Astartes tactics. During the Battle of Zaladin Forge, Minotaur's forces engaged a substantial Black Legion warband led by the warlord Krazath the Unmaker. Their initial assault followed established protocols developed for operations against loyal chapters, focusing on decapitation strikes against command elements and systematic neutralization of heavy support assets. This approach proved initially effective, with Terminator assault teams breaching the traitor's command bunker within hours of engagement. However, as the operation progressed, the fundamental differences between loyal and traitor Astartes became increasingly apparent. The Black Legion forces demonstrated combat behaviors that defied conventional Astartes tactical doctrines, employing warp-based abilities and demonic allies that fell outside the Minotaur's established counter protocols. While the chapter ultimately secured victory, they sustained casualties approximately 35% higher than projection models had anticipated. Following this engagement, the Minotaurs implemented significant adaptations to their anti-Astartes protocols when engaging Chaos forces. Training scenarios incorporated warp-based threat responses, and equipment loadouts were modified to include increased stocks of specialized anti-demon munitions. Chaplains worked with librarians to develop enhanced mental conditioning techniques designed to protect battle brothers from warp-based psychological influences during extended engagements with Chaos forces. These adaptations proved effective during subsequent operations, particularly during the Nemengast campaign, where the chapter successfully eliminated a word-bearer's splinter force while sustaining casualties within acceptable parameters. Their modified approach incorporated elements of traditional anti-Astartes tactics, while accounting for the unpredictable nature of warp-corrupted opponents, demonstrating the chapter's ability to evolve their specialized combat doctrine to address emerging threats. The increased frequency of operations against Chaos forces raised inevitable questions regarding the chapter's potential vulnerability to corruption. Their specialized role as enforcers against other Astartes required intimate knowledge of transhuman psychology and physiology, knowledge that could potentially create exploitation vectors for warp entities seeking to subvert their loyalty. The chapter's somewhat ambiguous genetic lineage further complicated these concerns, as certain gene seed lines have historically demonstrated greater susceptibility to specific corruption patterns. The Minotaurs addressed these concerns through characteristically rigorous protocols. Following any engagement with warp-tainted forces, all participating battle brothers underwent extensive screening by both librarians and chaplains, with particular attention to subtle corruption indicators that might escape standard detection methods. Equipment exposed to warp energies underwent specialized purification rituals developed in consultation with Ordo Malleus representatives, combining traditional Astartes cleansing protocols with more esoteric inquisitorial methodologies. Most significantly, the chapter implemented what they termed cognitive isolation protocols for warriors showing even minimal signs of warp influence. These protocols involved temporary removal from active duty, intensive psychological reconditioning, and in some cases, limited memory adjustment to remove potentially corrupting experiences. While such measures might seem extreme by the standards of other chapters, they reflected the Minotaur's pragmatic approach to maintaining absolute loyalty and combat effectiveness regardless of psychological cost to individual warriors. Despite these precautions, persistent rumors continued to circulate regarding potential corruption within specialized elements of the chapter. Inquisitorial reports noted that certain Minotaurs units deployed against particularly powerful warp entities demonstrated combat techniques suggesting unusual familiarity with their opponent's capabilities. During the purge of the Nightshard cult, Minotaur's assault teams navigated a warp-distorted battlefield with unexpected efficiency, leading some observers to question whether this represented specialized training or something more concerning. The Ordo Malleus maintained ongoing monitoring of the chapter, with particular focus on their post-engagement purification protocols and gene seed purity. While no conclusive evidence of corruption has emerged, the Inquisition's continued interest reflects the inherent risks associated with the Minotaur's specialized combat role and the high-value target they would represent for chaos forces seeking to subvert one of the Imperium's most effective enforcement tools. As the Dark Millennium progresses, the Minotaur's future trajectory appears increasingly focused on maintaining critical balance points within the fractured Imperium. Their operations concentrate on three key strategic priorities: securing Terra's extended defense network, neutralizing chaos incursions within the Segmentum Solar, and maintaining their specialized enforcement capability against potential internal threats. This balanced approach preserves their traditional role while adapting to the new strategic realities created by the Great Rift. The chapter's relationship with the High Lords remains their defining characteristic, though this connection has evolved to accommodate Guilliman's return. Where they once operated as the direct and exclusive instrument of the Senatorum Imperialis, they now function within a more complex authority structure that requires careful navigation of occasionally competing directives. This evolution has not diminished their effectiveness, but has required increased diplomatic sophistication in determining deployment priorities and operational parameters. Evidence suggests the chapter maintains contingency plans for various potential developments within the Imperium's command structure. Their fleet deployments follow patterns that would enable rapid response to Terra if required, while their continued emphasis on anti-Astartes combat training indicates they remain prepared to execute their traditional enforcement role should circumstances demand it. This readiness represents not disloyalty to current Imperial leadership, but rather their pragmatic commitment to maintaining all capabilities that might be required in defense of the Imperium's core interests. The Minotaur's acquisition patterns reveal continued emphasis on technologies and intelligence relevant to their specialized combat role. They maintain extensive databases on other chapters' combat doctrines, regularly updated through both official channels and direct battlefield observation during joint operations. Their armories continue to receive specialized weapons optimized for effectiveness against Astartes physiology, including recently developed variants calibrated specifically for Primaris anatomical structures. These preparations have not gone unnoticed by other chapters, many of whom maintain cautious distance from the Minotaurs while monitoring their activities through various intelligence networks. The Space Wolves in particular have established dedicated observation protocols for tracking Minotaur's fleet movements, while the Ultramarines maintain detailed records of all interactions between their successors and the bronze-armored enforcers. This mutual surveillance creates a complex deterrence relationship that helps maintain balance within the Adeptus Astartes, even as the broader Imperium faces unprecedented challenges. As humanity enters perhaps the most perilous period in its history, the Minotaurs stand as a reminder of the complex moral calculations required for species survival. Their methods may seem excessive, their loyalty coldly pragmatic rather than nobly inspired, but their effectiveness in executing the will of Terra remains beyond question. In an era where the line between necessary harshness and excessive cruelty grows increasingly blurred, the Minotaurs continue their ancient purpose, ensuring compliance by any means necessary, preserving the Imperium's core authority through precisely applied violence when all other methods have failed. The bronze-armored warriors remain what they have always been, not heroes to be celebrated in Imperial propaganda, not champions venerated in public monuments, but the final sanction applied when the Imperium's patience reaches its end. As the threats facing humanity grow ever more dire, the High Lords of Terra maintain their most reliable instrument, the bronze gauntlet that strikes without hesitation, without mercy, and without fail when the emperors will must be enforced at any cost.